At the luxury fashion gala aboard the yacht, my ex-husband's mistress smiled and said, "If you had known how to make a man want to come home, I wouldn't be standing here in the clothes he bought for me." My sister laughed first, then said loudly, "She has always loved playing the victim. Truth is, she was never good enough to keep a man." My ex-husband only stared with quiet contempt. But beneath the table, my 15-year-old son squeezed my hand and whispered, "Mom, it's okay. They still don't know who organized this party." This story is about reclaiming what was stolen: a name, a voice 22 years. Before we start, please drop a comment. What are you doing while you listen? Working, driving, just taking a moment for yourself. I truly appreciate you being here. Quick note, some details are fictionalized to highlight the lesson. The heart of this story is what matters most. I'm Anastasia Vale, 38, and the night my whole family laughed at me on that yacht, I was watching a woman wear my stolen name like a trophy. October in New York Harbor carries a particular kind of cold, the kind that seeps through silk and settles in your chest. 200 guests filled the deck of the Meridian Manhattan's elite, packed shoulder to shoulder under strings of golden lights. Champagne flowed. Models glided down the temporary runway in couture that cost more than most people's cars. The fashion show was ending, and I sat at the lowest table on the deck with my 15-year-old son beside me. Milo had his father's dark eyes but my steady hands. He sat with the posture of someone who'd learned too young how to be invisible, his shoulders tight under his blazer. My sister Celeste had arranged the seating she always did at every family event for the past 14 years. Lowest table, farthest from the stage. Close enough to see everything, far enough that everyone could see where I'd been placed. "Mom, we can leave," Milo whispered, his voice barely audible over the applause as the final model took her walk. "Not yet, sweetheart," I said. "Not yet." I kept my hands folded on the white tablecloth. I'd learned a long time ago that stillness was a kind of power when everyone expected you to break. The last model stepped off the runway, and that's when Yvette Harrington walked toward me. She was 31, draped in $47,000 of silk I'd sewn myself. The dress was the color of winter sky, hand-beaded along the bodice in a pattern that had taken me 3 weeks to get right. A. Vale Atelier's signature piece from the spring collection. She moved through the crowd like she owned the yacht, and maybe in her mind she did. She was wearing my ex-husband's money and my name, and she had no idea about either. Yvette stopped at our table close enough that I could smell her perfume, something French and expensive. She touched the fabric of her dress, deliberately smoothing it over her hip. "Anastasia," she said loud enough for the tables around us to hear. "I wanted to say hello, and to tell you something I've been thinking about." I looked up at her, said nothing. "If you'd known how to be a real wife," Yvette continued, her smile sharp and practiced, "I wouldn't have had the chance to wear the dresses your husband buys for me." The dress she was smoothing cost $47,000. I designed every seam. I selected the fabric in a textile warehouse in Brooklyn at 4 in the morning because that's when the light was right. I spent 16-hour days creating the pattern that made that silk move like water. And she was standing in front of me, mocking me with my own work. I counted to 5. I've been counting to 5 for 14 years. "That's a beautiful dress," I said quietly. Guests at the nearby tables turned to watch. I could feel their eyes, their whispers. This was dinner theater at 30,000 feet of wealth. You need to understand something about humiliation at this altitude. It's performed in whispers and silk, and everyone watches because watching is what you do when you're too polite to intervene. My mother's voice cut through the murmur. Constance Blackwell, 65 and still wearing her wedding ring 8 years after my father died, sat 3 chairs away in the best seat. She didn't look at me when she spoke. "If a woman can't keep her husband," she said clearly, her words carrying across the deck, "don't blame the man for finding someone more worthy." Milo's hand tightened on the edge of the table. I put my hand over his under the tablecloth, felt his knuckles white against mine. My sister Celeste leaned forward, then 41, and wrapped in pearls she'd told me cost $17,000. She had the same smile she'd worn at my divorce hearing, at Thanksgiving dinners, at every family gathering where she'd positioned herself 3 steps closer to success than me. She's always played the victim, Celeste said, addressing Yvette, but meaning me. Some of us just handle life better. I looked at my sister, at my mother, at Yvette standing there in my dress like she'd earned it. Across the deck near the champagne bar, I saw him, Desmond Sterling, 44 and impeccably tailored, in a suit that cost more than my first year's rent. He was watching this unfold, with his hand resting on the back of an empty chair, his wine glass loose in his other hand. He smiled at me, not cruel, not kind. Just the smile of a man who believed he'd won. He had no idea he was standing at a fashion show funded by my designs, that every dress on that runway carried my invisible signature, that the empire he'd built had my name carved into its foundation in letters no one could see. Not yet. The guests were murmuring now, some laughing quietly behind their hands. This was what they'd come for, not just the fashion but the drama. The ex-wife at the lowest table, while the new woman wore $47,000 of proof that she'd replaced me. My son was 15 years old. He should not have needed to be this brave. But Milo leaned close to me, his shoulder against mine, and he whispered in my ear, "Mom, let them laugh. They still don't know they're wearing your name." I looked at him, at his young face that understood too much, at the way he'd learned to hold himself together in rooms designed to break us both. Then I looked at the dress on Yvette at the runway behind her, at my ex-husband holding his wine glass like a trophy. That line from my 15-year-old son, that one sentence about them wearing my name, took me back 22 years, to a different kind of fire. To the beginning of this, when I didn't know yet how to fight back. To the day my mother burned my first sketchbook in our backyard and told me I'd never be good enough to make it. 22 years ago, I was 16 years old, and I believed my sister when she cried. September 2002. Late afternoon in our suburban New York kitchen. I was doing calculus homework when Celeste ran through the front door. She was 20, home from college for the weekend. Her face was red, tears streaming, torn paper clutched in her hands. "Mom!" she screamed. "Mom, look what she did!" My mother came from the laundry room, dish towel in hand. Constance was 43, her mouth set in the permanent line of someone who'd decided the world was disappointing. "What happened?" she asked. "She tore them all up," Celeste sobbed, pointing at me. "Every single one. She's always been jealous. And when Mrs. Patterson praised my work yesterday, she destroyed everything." I looked up, confused. "What are you talking about?" These Celeste thrust torn drawings toward me, figure studies, rough sketches. "You ripped them out of my portfolio." "I didn't touch anything," I said. "Mom, I wasn't even home this afternoon. I was at the library until 20 minutes ago." But my mother wasn't looking at me. She was looking at Celeste's tears, at the performance my sister had perfected over 20 years. "Don't lie to me," my mother said. "I'm tired of your jealousy, Anastasia." "I'm not lying. Enough." She walked past me toward my bedroom. "If you can destroy your sister's work, I can destroy yours." I followed, heart pounding. "Mom, please just look at the dates on those papers." She knelt beside my bed and pulled out my sketchbook. 3 years of my life. Fashion designs, figure studies, fabric swatches, dress patterns I'd drafted until the proportions were right. She stood and walked toward the back door. "Mom, please," I said. "Please just look at the dates. I've been working on these since I was 13. "I don't need to look at anything," she said. "Your sister doesn't lie." Through the kitchen window, I saw Celeste at the sink watching us. She wasn't crying anymore. Her face was dry calm. She met my eyes and I understood. "You need to understand, this wasn't about the drawings. This was about power. About who got believed and who got punished. About a script where Celeste was the good daughter and I was the problem." My mother set the sketchbook on the patio, went to the garage, came back with lighter fluid. "Mom," I said, voice steady because begging wouldn't work. "That's 3 years of work." She poured the fluid over the pages. The chemical smell hit sharp and wrong. "Drawing won't support anyone, Anastasia," she said, pulling out matches. "When are you going to learn that?" She struck the match, dropped it. The pages curled immediately, edges blackening. Fire ate through the spiral binding, through the dress designs I'd perfected, through the figure studies I'd practiced until my hand cramped. 3 years turning to smoke. I didn't cry. I stood and watched, hands at my sides, face blank. That silence made my mother angrier than anything I could have said. She crossed the distance in 2 steps and slapped me hard. The sound cracked through the yard. My head snapped sideways. I tasted blood where my lips split. "Get inside," she said, "and apologize to your sister." I didn't cry. I wouldn't give her my tears the way Celeste had given her fake ones. I walked back into the house past Celeste standing in the doorway. "I'm sorry you're so jealous," she whispered. I went to my room and closed the door. I was 16. I didn't know yet that some wounds take 22 years to heal. I didn't know the smoke from my mother's backyard would follow me into adulthood, into marriage, into every moment I tried to create something. But next door someone was watching. Judith Hampton, 52 and living beside us for 18 years, stood at her kitchen window that September evening and watched a mother burn her daughter's dreams. She saw the smoke, the slap, the girl who didn't cry. After we went inside, Judith walked out her back door to the fence line between our properties. The sketchbook was still smoldering on the concrete. Most of it was ash. But there were pieces the fire hadn't finished. Corners of pages, fragments with pencil lines still visible. Judith reached through the fence and picked up 3 pieces. Warm in her hands, edges charred, but the drawings were still there. A woman's face, a dress collar with careful shading, hands folded. She took them inside and found an old tin box in her hall closet, the kind that used to hold cookies. She laid the burnt pieces carefully inside, then wrote on masking tape September 2002. She pressed it to the bottom and closed the lid. She didn't know why she was keeping them. Didn't know what good 3 burnt scraps would do. She just knew that girl who didn't cry would need proof someday. Proof she hadn't been lying. Proof she could create something beautiful. Judith put the tin box in her closet and didn't tell anyone. I didn't know she'd done it. Wouldn't know for 22 years. I only knew that night that my mother had burned the only proof I'd ever had that I was good at something. 2 years later, at 18, I left that house with 1 suitcase and never went back. 2 years after the fire, I left at dawn with 1 suitcase and $340 I'd saved from a year of weekend shifts at the grocery store. I was 18. Spring morning in 2004, the kind where the light comes thin and gray through the windows. I packed the night before, closed my new cheap sketchbook I'd hidden under the mattress, the acceptance letter to Fashion Institute of Technology's night program. I moved through the house in silence. My mother was asleep. Celeste was back at college. I didn't leave a note. There was nothing left to say to people who'd already decided what I was worth. The bus station was 4 miles away. I walked it with the suitcase bumping against my leg, leaving dents in my shin that would bruise purple by evening. The bus driver looked at me when I bought the ticket one way to Brooklyn. "Running away?" he asked. "No," I said. "I'm 18. Legally, it's just called leaving." Brooklyn was $67 away and felt like a different country. The apartment I'd found in a newspaper ad was 400 square feet above a laundromat on a street where sirens were the evening soundtrack. The landlord was a man named Victor, who took cash only and didn't ask questions. $200 a month. I signed a 6-month lease and moved in that afternoon with my suitcase and nothing else. The first night I sat on the floor, there was no furniture yet, and opened my sketchbook. Drew the view from the window. Fire escape, brick wall, laundromat sign buzzing neon below. It wasn't home, but it was mine. The next 5 years were built on 3 part-time jobs and no sleep. Laundromat front desk during the day, folding other people's sheets, making change, mopping floors that smelled like detergent and quarters. Diner waitress 3 nights a week, coffee stains on my uniform, tips counted in singles and loose change. Retail stock on weekends, unpacking boxes in fluorescent lit back rooms at stores I couldn't afford to shop in. I studied fashion design at night. Community college first, then FIT when I'd saved enough. I ate 99-cent noodles and day-old bread. Every dollar not spent on rent or tuition went into fabric, sketch paper, needles, thread. The laundromat manager asked me once why I worked so many shifts. "Saving up," I said. She thought I meant for a car. I meant for proof. My first week's paycheck, $117 after taxes. I walked to the art supply store on Flatbush Avenue. I stood in front of the sketchbook section for 15 minutes. Finally picked one up. Spiral bound, blank pages, $8. I held it at the register for a long time before I could let the cashier scan it. When I got back to my apartment, I sat with it closed on my lap. The first page I'd open would be the first page since the fire. since my mother burned 3 years of my work and told me I'd never be good enough. I opened it, drew a dress, then another, filled the first 3 pages that night. By year 5, I'd filled 17 sketchbooks. Not one page burned. Not one page seen by my mother or sister. Each one was proof I'd rebuilt what they tried to destroy. Here's what they don't tell you about rebuilding. It's not the big moments that save you, it's the small ones you don't let anyone take. The first sketchbook, the first garment you sew alone at midnight, the first time you sign your name to something and don't ask permission. Spring 2009. I was 23. My fashion design instructor at FIT pulled me aside after class. "There's a small group exhibition in Soho next month," she said. "Emerging designers, I'm recommending you." I stared at her. "You're recommending me?" "Your work is ready," she said. "Submit 12 pieces." I spent 3 weeks preparing. Selected 12 garments I'd sewn in my apartment studio dresses, constructed on a dress form I'd bought, used patterns I'd drafted on newspaper spread across my floor. I borrowed money I didn't have to frame sketches and pressed the garments professionally, paid it back in double shifts. The night before the opening, I stood alone in the gallery. My 12 pieces hung on the wall, my sketches in simple black frames, and there, on a small white placard, printed in clean sans serif type, Anastasia Vale Designer. First time I'd seen my name and that word in the same line. I stood there and thought, if my mother could see this, would it change anything? Then I realized I didn't care anymore. This wasn't for her. It was for the 16-year-old girl who'd watched her sketchbook burn and hadn't cried. The 18-year-old who'd left with one suitcase. The 23-year-old who'd worked 3 jobs and filled 17 sketchbooks no one could take away. 12 pieces. 12 proofs I'd rebuilt from nothing. The exhibition opens on a Friday evening in May. Small crowd fit connections. Soho gallery browsers, people holding wine glasses and making polite conversation. I stood in the corner in a dress I'd made myself, watching strangers look at my work. Then Desmond Sterling walked in. I noticed him immediately. Expensive suit, confident posture, the way he moved through the room like he owned the air he was breathing. He was 31, though I didn't know that yet. I just knew he looked at my pieces like they mattered. He spent 15 minutes studying the sketches, leaning close to examine the construction details on the garments. Then he found me. "These are yours," he asked, gesturing to my wall. "Yes." "The construction is technically flawless," he said, "but it's the vision that's rare. You see how fabric should move, not just how it does move." I was 23 and so starved for recognition that I couldn't see the difference between being seen and being studied. "Thank you," I said. "I can help you," Desmond said. "I know the buyers, the press, the people who make careers happen in this city. You shouldn't be in a group show, you should have your own line." He was the first person who'd ever looked at my work and seen genius instead of a girl who couldn't keep things practical. I believed him. That was my mistake, not that I trusted, but that I was so hungry to be seen that I didn't notice I was being measured for theft. He asked if he could photograph 3 pieces to show his contacts. I said yes. He held my sketchbook like it was rare and valuable. Asked about my process, my influences, my vision for the future. We married 14 months later. I gave him 14 years of my work, every sketch, every design, every piece of myself I'd rebuilt from ash. I thought I was building a partnership. He was building an empire on stolen foundation. The contract Desmond put in front of me 3 weeks after our wedding had my signature line at the bottom and his company name at the top. We married in June 2010. I was 24, he was 32. City Hall ceremony with 2 witnesses from his attorney's office. My family wasn't invited. I told myself it was my choice, not his suggestion. 3 weeks later, Manhattan conference room. Sleek table, floor-to-ceiling windows, and attorney Marcus Bentley, mid-50s, and representing Desmond's business interests, who slid the contract across the table with practiced efficiency. He'd done this for a dozen creative partnerships and knew most spouses never read the fine print. "Standard for married creative partners," Desmond said. "This protects the business and gives us both legal standing. Trust me, this is how everyone does it." 12 pages. I read page 1 partnership agreement. Skimmed the middle liability clause's asset division. Signed page 12 without reading page 6. Page 6 was the copyright clause. Every design produced during the partnership would be copyrighted exclusively under Desmond Sterling Atelier. My role design consultant, compensated through marriage, not ownership. Attorney Bentley asked, Mrs. Sterling, do you understand you're signing over creative rights to work produced during this partnership? We're partners, I said. It doesn't matter whose name is on the paperwork. Desmond smiled. I signed. The first collection launched 6 months later under his name only. Magazine spreads, Fashion Week, investor meetings where I wasn't invited but my designs were presented as his vision. I told myself it was temporary. That partnership meant trust, not ownership. I was wrong. The next 5 years, 2010 to 2015, looked like success from outside. Desmond Sterling Atelier grew from startup to recognized name. Every collection, every magazine feature carried his face. I designed in our Brooklyn apartment late at night. He presented in Manhattan showrooms during the day. I'd had Milo the year before we married, winter 2009. I nursed him while sketching, sewed one-handed holding a sleeping infant, drafted patterns with a toddler pulling at my skirt. Desmond's career skyrocketed. Mine stayed invisible. I read an interview in New York Magazine while Milo slept in his bassinet beside my drafting table. The headline, Designer Desmond Sterling discusses his innovative approach to modern couture. The quote, the vision comes naturally. I see how fabric should move before I cut the first pattern. Every word described work I'd completed 3 nights earlier at 2 a.m. He came home that evening from the release party. The Harper's Bazaar editor loved the collection, he said. She wants to profile my creative process. Our creative process, I said. He looked at me. Right, ours. The profile never mentioned my name. You want to know when I realized I'd been stolen from not year 1, not year 5, year 8 when my son asked a question I couldn't answer without lying. Milo grew up beside my sewing machine. His earliest memories were fabric being cut, the machine whirring at midnight, my voice singing while I worked. He fell asleep most nights on a blanket beside my chair. He learned to thread needles at 5. Started drawing at 6, showed me his sketches. First the way children do when they want the person they trust most to see them. Desmond was barely home. Events, business trips, investor dinners. When home, he was on the phone reviewing contracts. The apartment was mine and Milo's. Desmond just slept there sometimes. Milo asked when he was 7. Why doesn't Daddy help you? Daddy has a different job. What job? Talking about my job. He frowned working this out, then went back to his coloring book. His first drawing was a woman at a sewing machine. He was 6. He drew it at 11 at night because that's when he saw me, not in daylight, not at parks, but bent over fabric under a single lamp. By 2017, Milo was 8, old enough to read, old enough to ask harder questions. He found a fashion magazine on the coffee table, Desmond's photo on the cover. 3-page spread inside. Photo of him beside a dress form wearing a gown I'd finished 2 weeks earlier. Milo brought it to me in the kitchen. Mama, why is Daddy's picture in this magazine? You made this dress. I saw you. I looked at the photo. At Desmond's hand on the dress form like he'd shaped every seam. At the caption, Designer Desmond Sterling in his creative studio. It's complicated, baby. But you made it, Milo insisted. He was 8 and he'd watched me work every day of his life. Desmond came out of the bedroom, then phone in hand. Drawing won't support anyone, Milo, he said matter-of-factly. Your mother helps with creative work, but I'm the one who built this into a real business. There's a difference between making art and making money. There's a special kind of rage that comes from hearing your trauma repeated in someone else's voice to your own child. My mother's words, exact phrasing. Drawing won't support anyone, as if the last 14 years since the fire, since Brooklyn, since I'd rebuilt myself, could be erased with one sentence. As if I was 16 again, watching my work burn. But I was 31 now. I had a son, and I had learned something my 16-year-old self didn't know: women's instincts are usually right. That night after Milo was asleep and Desmond was at another event, I started keeping copies. Dated sketches, email timestamps, design files with metadata intact. I made a folder labeled freelance work and backed it up to a cloud drive Desmond didn't know existed. I didn't have a plan, just an instinct that I'd seen this ending before. My mother had burned the proof once. This time I was going to make sure the proof couldn't burn. 3 years after I started keeping records, Desmond brought another woman to the Manhattan Fashion Week gala and introduced her as his partner. February 2020. I was 34. The gala was at the Pierre 500 Guests Champagne Fountains runway show, featuring the spring collection I'd designed. Desmond arrived with Yvette Harrington on his arm. She was 29, striking in a dress I'd never seen before, which meant he'd had someone else make it. He introduced her to everyone within earshot as his creative consultant. I watched from across the room. My mother and sister were there too. They always came to the big events close enough to Desmond's world to claim association far enough from me to deny we were related. Desmond kissed Yvette in front of the photographers, made sure the cameras captured it, held her waist while she laughed at something he said. It was calculated precise. He wanted me to react, to cry, to shout, to give him ammunition for what I knew was coming. Celeste whispered to my mother loud enough for me to hear. I told you she couldn't keep him interested. A man like Desmond needs someone who inspires him. Desmond turned, saw me watching, and smiled, not apologetic, triumphant. You understand the vision, he said to Yvette, his voice carrying. True creative partnership. I haven't experienced this in years. I smiled back at them both. Went home, put Milo to bed. The divorce papers arrived 6 days later. The proceedings lasted 6 months, March through August. My family sided with Desmond immediately. My mother said I'd let myself go creatively, that I'd always been difficult to love. Celeste called me bitter, said I was jealous of Desmond's success the same way I'd been jealous of her work at 20. The settlement. Desmond's lawyers presented was brutal. He kept the business, all copyrights, 80% of marital assets. I got the Brooklyn apartment and minimal cash. Attorney Marcus Bentley slid the papers across the conference table with the same practiced efficiency he'd used 10 years earlier. Mrs. Sterling, he said, you understand you're relinquishing all claims to work produced during the marriage under the partnership agreement you signed in 2010. I understand completely, I said. Where do I sign? I read every line, understood perfectly what I was giving away on paper, signed anyway. Desmond watched me sign with an expression close to disappointment. He'd wanted a fight. He got compliance. After I left the office, I heard him say to his attorney, I thought she'd fight harder. She must not understand what she just gave up. I understood every word. I also understood I had copies of everything and he didn't know they existed. Want to know what it feels like to sign away 10 years of your life? Like relief because you know something they don't. The divorce finalized in August 2020. I was 34, legally stripped of credit for a decade of work living in a 400-square-foot apartment with my 12-year-old son. 1 month later, I filed the trademark. Veil Atelier. Anonymous luxury brand. No owner name public. Just a signature style that anyone in the industry would recognize if they were paying attention. I needed help organizing the evidence I'd collected. 3 years of files, sketches, emails, timestamps. I called Noelle Mercer. Noelle was 40, creative director who'd worked with Desmond's business since 2010. She'd been in every meeting, every design review, every presentation where he claimed my work as his. I asked if she'd help me keep copyright records, if she had any files from the old days that might prove ownership. She came to my apartment that night, opened her laptop, showed me what she'd been keeping. Noelle Mercer. 40 years old and carrying the kind of organized mind that remembers every detail. Opened her laptop in my Brooklyn apartment and showed me 15 years of files I didn't know existed, every email, every sketch, every piece of proof that Desmond Sterling had built his empire on stolen work. I kept everything, she said. Every email he sent claiming your work, every design file with your metadata, 15 years of evidence. I stared at the screen. Folders organized by year, by collection, by design. Timestamps, version histories. Email chains where Desmond forwarded my sketches to manufacturers with his name in the subject line. Why, I asked. Why would you keep all that? Because I've worked in this industry 20 years, Noelle said. I know what theft looks like. I just didn't know when you'd be ready to fight back. For the first time since I was 16, someone saw me and chose to protect me without asking what I could give them first. I'm ready now, I said. Good, she said, because I've been waiting. 6 weeks after I registered Veil Atelier, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Ms. Vale, the voice said, my name is Atticus Whitfield. Atticus Whitfield, 60 years old with 4 decades of luxury fashion power behind his name, called my apartment line on a Tuesday evening and said 5 words that changed everything. I know who you are. I said nothing. I've been following A. Vale Atelier since the trademark filing, he continued. I recognize your design signature. I've been in this industry 40 years. I know genuine talent when I see it, and I recognize theft. Why are you calling me? I asked. To propose collaboration. Keep your identity secret until the right moment. I'll provide resources, connections, platforms. You provide the work that will prove Desmond Sterling has been stealing for 14 years. Why would you help me? You don't know me. I know your work, he said. That's enough, and I don't tolerate fraud in my industry. When? I asked. When would we reveal the truth? When the thief himself steps onto your stage, Atticus said. When he's surrounded by witnesses, when the evidence is undeniable, when the world is watching. Are you patient enough to wait? I thought about the sketchbook burning in my mother's backyard. About 14 years of watching Desmond take credit for my work. About Milo asking why Daddy's name was on the magazines. I've been waiting since I was 16, I said. Then we'll wait together, Atticus said. And when the moment comes, we'll make sure everyone sees exactly who built that empire. I sat in my Brooklyn apartment after that call ended. Milo was asleep in the next room. Noel's 15 years of evidence was on my laptop screen. Atticus Whitfield had just offered me power I'd never had before. The plan wasn't revenge, it was precision. And I had 3 years to prepare for the night Desmond Sterling would walk onto a yacht stage wearing someone else's genius like a crown. The first year of preparation, I focused on building A. Vale Atelier. The second year, my son showed me he'd been building something else. Spring 2022. Milo was 13. I came home from a meeting with Noel about the fall collection and found him waiting at the kitchen table with his hands folded, the posture he used when he had something important to say. I need to show you something, he said. He led me to his bedroom. Against the walls, leaning on every available surface, were 17 paintings I'd never seen before. The first one was titled Woman at 2 a.m. It showed a figure bent over a sewing machine, single lamp illuminating fabric city lights through a window behind her. The brushwork captured exhaustion and determination in equal measure. I realized looking at it that I was staring at myself. At a moment I thought no one had witnessed. I've been painting you, Mom, Milo said quietly. Not portraits, moments, the ones I thought you needed someone to remember. I moved to the next painting. Hands threading needles. Close-up of hands I recognized as my own, teaching small fingers how to thread a needle. The child's hands were his at age 5. How long have you been making these? I asked. Since I was 11, he said. Since the night you came home from signing the divorce papers and thought I was asleep. I walked along the wall, painting by painting. Mother. Looking at Fire Me standing at a trash can, burning old marriage documents, face lit orange. Woman in empty gallery. Me alone, before an A. Vale Atelier show, standing in the silence before people arrived. Brooklyn morning, my reflection in the apartment window at dawn, coffee cup in hand, watching the city wake up. He'd titled them all. Each one was a moment he'd seen and decided to preserve. Moments when I thought I was alone with my rebuilding. My son was 13 years old, and he'd been keeping a visual record of my survival because he understood, even when I didn't, that someone needed to remember. Milo, I said, and couldn't finish the sentence. You needed a witness, he said simply. I wanted it to be me. A week later, Noelle came over for a planning meeting about the fall A. Vale Atelier collection. She walked into the living room and stopped mid-sentence. Milo had moved 3 of the paintings out there. I'd asked him if I could display them where I worked. Noelle set down her laptop, walked to the paintings, spent 20 minutes studying them in complete silence. Milo, she finally said, turning to look at him, has anyone else seen these? No, he said. They're private. These paintings. Noelle started again. This isn't just talent. This is documentation. You're creating historical record through emotional lens. Milo looked uncomfortable. I don't want people to know they're about Mom. That's private. Then we make you anonymous, Noelle said. Complete anonymity, no age, no name, just the work. Post them online, build a portfolio. New York collectors would pay substantial amounts for this level of emotional authenticity. Milo looked at me. I saw the question in his face. It's your choice, I said. Always your choice. I can help you manage it, Noelle said. You're 13, you can't handle transactions legally yet. But I can set up a portfolio, manage sales, everything above board, if you want. Milo was quiet for a long time, then he said one condition. What condition? Noelle asked. Any money from the paintings goes directly to buying design supplies for my mother. Fabric thread equipment for A Veil Atelier. I don't keep any of it. Milo, I said, that's your work. You should. You worked for Dad for 10 years and didn't keep anything, he said, looking at me with eyes older than 13. I'm buying you back what you lost. Noelle created the profile that week. She called it Little Orion, the constellation Milo had loved when he was small, the one he'd asked me to point out every night when we walked home from the laundromat when he was 5. She posted 5 paintings. Within 3 days, the first inquiry came from a Manhattan collector. Within 2 weeks, the first saleswoman at 2 a.m. for $2,400. Milo handed me the check the next morning. Buy fabric, he said. I held the check and looked at my 13-year-old son who'd just sold a painting of me working at 2 a.m. so I could buy the supplies to keep working. Thank you, I said. You're welcome, he said, and went back to his bedroom to paint. Over the next 6 months, May through November 2022, Little Orion sold 12 paintings total. Prices climbed from $2,000 to $8,000 as word spread through New York art collectors. The anonymous identity created mystique. Art blogs speculated reclusive established painter, art school prodigy, European transplant. None of them guessed 13-year-old boy painting his mother's resilience. Milo kept painting. Now he painted new moments. Me at the design table with expensive fabric he'd bought me, smiling at a gallery owner, me teaching him to sketch at the kitchen table. The documentation continued, but the tone shifted. Less exhaustion, more hope. Every sale he gave me the money. Milo, you should save this, I said after the 6th painting sold for $5,000. For college, for your future. I'm investing it, he said, in the person who invested everything in me. Here's what they don't tell you about children who grow up watching injustice. They learn to document it, and then they learn to weaponize their testimony. By November, a collector offered $12,000 for the next painting. Noelle called with the news. Milo, she said, at this rate you'll have enough for your college fund by 16. Put it toward Mom's next collection instead, he said. I watched my son make that choice. Watched him redirect $12,000 away from his future toward mine. And I understood something I hadn't before. We weren't just preparing to expose Desmond. We were building something that would outlast the exposure. An empire of our own. One painting, one design, one choice at a time. By November 2022, Little Orion had sold 12 paintings for a total of $74,000. My 13-year-old son had used every cent to buy supplies, equipment, and independence for A Veil Atelier. Desmond Sterling had no idea his own son was funding the competition. Neither did the Manhattan art collectors who were about to meet Little Orion face to face. 6 months later, the anonymous artist had a gallery opening. May 2023. Milo was 14. The Soho Gallery hosting the Little Orion exhibition had sent the invitation to Noelle, who'd forwarded it to me with a single line, "You should bring him." We stood in the doorway together, mother and son, looking at 8 paintings hanging under professional gallery lighting. Woman at 2 a.m., hands threading needles, mother looking at fire, Brooklyn morning. 4 new ones I'd never seen. He'd been painting in secret again. The first time my 14-year-old son saw his own paintings hanging in a Soho gallery, he stopped breathing for 3 full seconds. Mom, he whispered, they're real. I painted them in my bedroom, and now they're real. They were always real, baby, I said. These people are just finally seeing what I've seen since you were 11. He walked slowly toward Woman at 2 a.m. The gallery had lit it perfectly warm spotlight that caught the exhaustion in the brushstrokes, the way he'd painted isolation, even in the presence of fabric and city lights. The placard beside it said, Little Orion, 2022 oil on canvas, $18,000. It didn't say Milo Vale, 13 years old, painted this after watching his mother work until dawn. Milo stood in front of it for 5 minutes without moving. I watched him check the frame study, the lighting placement, examine the way they'd hung it slightly forward from the wall to catch shadow. Protective. Worried. The way an artist looks at their work when they're not sure if the gallery has honored it properly. Across the room, a man was watching us, Julian Redmond, 45 years old and standing in that Soho gallery, with the posture of someone who'd spent 2 decades learning to see art before he saw price tags, owned 7 Little Orion paintings, and was about to recognize the 14-year-old boy across the room as the artist who'd painted his mother's survival. I saw him notice Milo's body language first. The way my son tilted his head at the paintings, not studying composition, but checking brushstrokes the way you check your own signature to make sure it hasn't been forged. The way he reached toward woman at 2 a.m. without touching it, hand hovering 3 inches from the canvas like he was checking if it remembered him. Julian took a step closer, watched Milo move to the next painting, then looked at me. I met his eyes, saw recognition settle across his face, not just of Milo as the artist, but of me as the subject. Every painting in this gallery documented survival, and I was the woman who'd survived. There's a specific way an artist looks at their own work when they think no one's watching, checking, not if it's good, but if it survived the journey from private to public intact. Julian saw that, understood it, and crossed the gallery toward us. "Excuse me?" he said, his voice quiet enough not to draw attention from other viewers. "I wanted to introduce myself, Julian Redmond. I collect emerging talent." Milo turned slightly startled. "Oh, hi. I own 7 Little Orion paintings," Julian said, looking at Milo steadily. "Been collecting since November. This work it documents survival in a way most established artists can't capture." Milo's face went carefully neutral. "The technique is, the artist uses light to show isolation even in company. See how the subject is illuminated, but everything else fades." "Exactly," Julian said. He turned to me. "You appreciate the work too." "I do," I said. "The subject appears in every piece." Julian continued, still looking at me. "The same woman at different stages, working late, teaching, surviving. Whoever Little Orion is, they understand that survival looks like beauty from the outside and exhaustion from the inside." I felt Milo tense beside me. "You collect art?" I asked. "I collect truth," Julian said. "And these paintings tell a story most people don't have the courage to document." We stood in silence for a moment. Other gallery visitors moved past us, wine glasses in hand, commenting on the mysterious Little Orion. No one else had recognized what Julian had seen in 30 seconds. "The anonymity is important," I said carefully. "Of course," Julian said. "Some stories need to be told without the teller being named, especially when the teller is—" He paused, looked at Milo again. "Especially when the work is this honest." Milo exhaled slowly. "I won't ask questions," Julian said. "I just wanted you both to know that the work matters, that someone sees it, really sees it." "Thank you," Milo said quietly. Julian nodded, started to turn away, then stopped, pulled a business card from his jacket pocket and handed it to me. "If you need anything," he said, looking between me and Milo, "either of you, I'm here. No questions, no conditions." He walked away before I could respond, disappeared into the gallery crowd. Milo turned to me immediately. "Mom, did he know?" "Yes," I said. "And he didn't tell anyone?" "No," I said, "he didn't." I looked at the card in my hand. Simple design. Julian Redmond followed by a phone number, nothing else. "Why would he do that?" Milo asked. "He could have, I don't know, exposed me, told the gallery, made it news." "You want to know what kindness looks like at the highest level? It's recognizing someone's secret and choosing to guard it instead of exploit it. Because some people understand that anonymity isn't hiding," I said. "It's protection, and he respects what you're protecting." I put the card in my wallet behind my emergency cash. I didn't call Julian Redmond for 6 months. But I also didn't throw the card away because I recognized something in the way he'd looked at my son. He understood that some secrets are kept, not because they're shameful, but because they're sacred. We stayed at the gallery for another hour, watched people study Milo's paintings, heard them speculate about Little Orion's identity. A gallery employee told us 3 paintings had sold that night, including Woman at 2 a.m. "That's $18,000, Milo whispered to me. "That's your work being valued," I whispered back. "That's your new fabric order," he said. We walked home through Soho as evening settled into night. My 14-year-old son had just watched strangers pay thousands of dollars for his testimony about my survival. And one man, Julian Redmond, who owned 7 of those testimonies, had recognized my son and chosen silence over revelation. 6 months later, when Desmond bought the most expensive dress in Avale Atelier's collection for his mistress to wear to a yacht party, Julian would be one of 3 people who understood exactly what was about to happen. But that night in May, he was just a man who'd bought 7 paintings and kept one secret. 6 months later was exactly when it happened, April 2024. Yvette Harrington walked into Avale Atelier's Manhattan showroom and asked to see the most expensive piece in the collection. Elena Bardot, 42, and managing the showroom with the discretion of someone who understood that luxury meant knowing when not to ask questions, watched Yvette walk in and immediately recognized the energy of a woman shopping with someone else's money. I wasn't there. Elena sent me the text 15 minutes after Yvette arrived. Client in showroom high profile asking for statement piece for October yacht event. Doesn't know it's you. I read that text 3 times. Milo was at school. The afternoon light came through the window at the angle that made me think of all those late nights at the sewing machine. At the showroom, Yvette was explaining her needs. My boyfriend is hosting a yacht party in October, she told Elena. Major fashion event, 200 guests. I need something that makes a statement. Avale Atelier specializes in statement pieces, Elena said. Our designer works anonymously, but the craftsmanship speaks for itself. Elena showed her 6 pieces from the exclusive collection, each priced between $35,000 and $52,000. Yvette didn't ask who designed them. She never asked. She just wanted the most expensive thing in the room. She examined all 6 touching fabric checking seams, but she kept returning to one. The silk dress the color of winter sky, hand-beaded along the bodice. The one I'd designed at 3 in the morning last year after Milo showed me his painting Woman at 2 a.m. I'd looked at his painting me at the sewing machine, single lamp city lights behind me, and thought, what would survival look like as a dress? This dress was the answer. And Yvette Harrington was about to buy it. This one, Yvette said. The blue, it's perfect. How much? 47,000, Elena said. It's one of our signature pieces, hand-beaded. I'll take it, Yvette said. Elena texted me, client selected number 47K piece for October event. Says it's for yacht party, runway show, and proposal moment. Paying with corporate card. I stared at my phone. Proposal moment. Desmond was going to propose to her on the yacht in front of 200 people while she wore a dress I designed. Watching your enemy buy your own work with your stolen money is like watching someone use your skeleton as a ladder. Architectural irony so perfect it stops being painful and starts being evidence. At the showroom, Yvette tried on the dress, turned in front of the mirror, took photos. Perfect for photos, she said. Desmond wants this party to be unforgettable. It will be, Elena said. I'll have the corporate card sent over, Yvette said. Desmond Sterling Atelier account. Can you deliver by October 1st? Of course, Elena said. 30 minutes later, the payment notification came through. Account ending in 4739. Desmond Sterling Atelier corporate account. $47,000. Transaction approved. I knew that account number. Dorian had traced it in 2021. The account used to embezzle over $40 million through shell companies. The account that held my stolen royalties. Desmond was using my money to buy my work so his mistress could wear it while mocking me. The mathematics of irony couldn't get more precise. I sat holding my phone looking at the transaction confirmation. The dress Yvette chose, I designed it after Milo painted me working at 2 a.m. She was buying my son's testimony of my survival to wear as a costume. I closed my eyes, opened them. The transaction was still there. Elena called an hour later. She loved it, said it was perfect, asked if the designer ever does custom work. I said the designer values anonymity. Thank you, I said. Anastasia, Elena said quietly. She has no idea what she just bought, does she? No, I said, she has no idea. 3 hours after the transaction, my phone rang. Atticus. He bought the dress, he said. I know, I said. I saw the notification. Account 4739, Atticus said. The same account Dorian traced. The irony is complete. I was standing in my studio. Milo would be home in an hour. Everything in this room was built from the refusal to stay erased. It feels like justice knocking on the door 6 months early, I said. October 15th, Atticus said. Yacht party, 200 Manhattan elite, fashion press, live stream capability. Are you ready? You want to know what patience tastes like? It tastes like watching someone pay $47,000 to guarantee their own public destruction. I've been ready since I was 16 and watched my work burn, I said. The answer is yes. Good, Atticus said. Because once we start, there's no stopping. He walks onto that stage, everything comes out. The embezzlement, the forged contracts, the copyright theft, all of it. All of it, I repeated. 6 months, he said. We have 6 months to make sure every piece of evidence is documented, every witness is prepared. I'll be ready, I said. I hung up and looked around my studio. At the fabric Milo's paintings had bought, at the sketches covering my walls, at the life I'd rebuilt twice. Desmond Sterling had just paid $47,000 for a dress I'd designed, using money he'd stolen from me so his mistress could wear it to a party where I'd expose him in front of 200 people who thought he was a genius. The trap wasn't set anymore. The trap was armed. 6 months to October 15th. 6 months to gather the last pieces of evidence. 6 months until Desmond walked onto a stage wearing someone else's genius and discovered exactly what happens when you steal from a woman who learned to document everything. I had been waiting 22 years. I could wait 6 more months. 1 month after Desmond bought the dress, Dorian showed me what it had really cost. May 2024. Manhattan Law Office, 28th floor. Dorian Kessler, forensic accountant I'd hired 2 years ago, had a conference room table covered in documents. Financial statements, bank records, corporate registrations, shell company structures. The number at the bottom of his spreadsheet was $43,274,612, and that was just what he could trace. 2 years, Dorian said, standing at the head of the table. That's how long it took to follow every dollar through every shell company, every offshore account, every forged contract. This number is conservative. There are accounts I suspect exist, but can't prove yet. I sat looking at that number, $43 million. $43 million of my work, I said. $43 million of fraud, Dorian corrected. There's a difference in court. One is civil, the other is criminal. He pulled up the first diagram on his laptop screen, mirrored on the conference room monitor. A flowchart showing money moving between companies like water through pipes. He didn't just steal your royalties, Dorian said. He created an architecture of theft. Shell companies formed the month after your wedding. Accounts opened in your name without your knowledge. Forged signatures on 17 separate contracts. I leaned forward, studying the chart. Sterling Design Holdings, LLC. Delaware Corporation formed August 2010. Received all design profits from Desmond Sterling Atelier. Then it transferred 70% to Vale House Ventures Limited, Cayman Islands. Then to Edelweiss Creative SA, Switzerland. Vale House Ventures, I said, pointing at the screen. That's my maiden name. He used your maiden name, Dorian said. Incorporated it in the Cayman Islands with your forged signature as co-owner. If authorities had investigated, you'd have been implicated. I stared at that name. Vale. My name before I married him. The name I'd taken back after divorce. He'd stolen that too, used it to build a company that would frame me as his accomplice. He set me up as his shield, I said. Exactly, Dorian said. If the IRS ever came looking, your name was on the paperwork, you'd be the co-conspirator. He pulled up another document. Contract after contract, all with signatures at the bottom. My signature, over and over. These 17 contracts, Dorian said. Everyone has a signature that looks like yours. I had forensic handwriting analysis done. All forgeries, all dated between 2010 and 2023. You want to know what $43 million of theft looks like on paper? It looks like love letters, carefully dated, meticulously organized, signed with someone else's name. Every collection you designed, Dorian continued, had profits systematically siphoned. Spring 2011 collection made $8 million in licensing deals. You saw none of it. It went through Sterling Design Holdings into Vale House, then to Switzerland. Pattern repeated for 14 years. I thought about those years, working at the sewing machine at 2 a.m., nursing Milo while sketching, thinking we were building something together while he was building an empire on my back, with my forged signature as the foundation. There's more, Dorian said. He pulled up 3 more contracts, different from the others. These had other signatures. 3 intermediary contracts dated 2018 through 2022, he said. Bradford Pierce's signature appears as business broker, facilitating deals between Desmond's companies and European luxury brands. I looked at the name, Bradford Pierce, my sister's husband. Did he know? I asked. Probably not, Dorian said. But ignorance isn't immunity. His signature on these documents facilitated transfers totaling $8.7 million through the Cayman Shell Company. He acted as broker, signed as witness. That makes him legally vulnerable as intermediary in money laundering scheme. I thought about Bradford at family dinners, laughing at Desmond's jokes, complimenting his vision angling for business connections. He'd gotten them, just not the kind he'd expected. Celeste's husband, I said. Your sister's husband, Dorian confirmed, who positioned himself as Desmond's ally and ended up signing illegal paperwork. The irony was almost perfect, almost. Dorian scrolled to one more document. Final piece of evidence, he said. This one's recent. Credit card statement. March 2024. One line item highlighted. Cartier Manhattan. Custom engagement ring. $127,000. Same account number as the dress purchase. Same account traced to embezzlement. I stared at that line. Delivery date is October 10th, Dorian said. 5 days before the yacht party. He's proposing that night, Anastasia. In front of 200 people, while she wears your dress with a ring purchased using your stolen money. The most expensive engagement ring in Cartier's spring collection paid for with money stolen from the woman he'd married 14 years earlier. Receipt shows engraving, Dorian added. D+I forever. I closed my eyes, opened them. That number was still there, $127,000. When the thief steps onto my stage, I said. Now we know exactly when and how, Dorian said. October 15th, proposal moment, maximum public exposure, 200 witnesses, fashion press, live stream capability. Are you ready? I've been ready since the first number didn't add up, I said. Dorian closed his laptop, pulled a USB drive from his desk drawer and slid it across the table to me. 2 years of investigation, he said. Every document, every forged signature, every offshore transfer. Bradford's 3 signatures, the engagement ring receipt, Shell Company registrations with your forged name, all of it. I picked up the USB drive, small thing, held $43 million of evidence in digital form. This ends him, Dorian said. I thought about my sister, about watching her perfect husband implode beside my ex-husband, about Desmond opening a ring box in front of 200 people who were about to learn the ring cost $43 million more than he'd paid for it. The number at the bottom of Dorian's spreadsheet wasn't just evidence, it was a countdown. 5 months, I said. 5 months until October 15th. 5 months to coordinate, Dorian said. Atticus has the venue locked. Noelle's handling logistics. You have the dress in production. Milo's paintings are documented. The question is, do we have every witness we need? I thought about that. About the evidence we'd gathered, the painting, the financial records, the forged contracts. There's one more, I said. One more witness from the beginning, the day the sketchbook burned. Dorian looked at me. Your neighbor from 2002? Judith Hampton, I said. If she's still in Brooklyn, if she still has what I think she kept. Atticus can find her, Dorian said. I held the USB drive and looked at the number one more time. $43,274,612. 5 months until Desmond Sterling learned exactly how much revenge costs when you've been stealing from an accountant's daughter who never forgot a single number. 2 weeks after Dorian handed me the USB drive, Atticus went to find the woman who'd kept my evidence for 22 years. Late September 2024. Brooklyn. Same neighborhood where I'd grown up, same house next to the Blackwell family home. Atticus Whitfield knocked on Judith Hampton's door, and before he could introduce himself, she looked at him and said, "You're here about Anastasia Vale." Atticus told me this later. Described how Judith, 74 now with white hair and steady hands, had opened the door and known immediately why he'd come. How did you know? Atticus asked. I've been waiting 22 years for someone to ask about that girl, Judith said. Come in. She led him to her hall closet. Same closet, same house, same spot where she'd stored the tin box in 2003. She pulled it from the shelf and opened it at her kitchen table. 3 burnt sketch pieces, charred edges, pencil lines still visible, a woman's face, a dress collar with careful shading, hands folded, September 2002 written on masking tape at the bottom of the box. I picked these up from the Blackwell yard after Constance burned the rest, Judith said. I wrote the date. I didn't know what I was keeping, just knew someone needed proof she wasn't lying. Will you come to a yacht party on October 15th? Atticus asked. And tell 200 people what you saw. Will Anastasia be there? Yes. Then so will I. Atticus called me that evening. We have the final witness. I stood in my studio, holding the phone, looking at the Manhattan skyline, thinking about Judith Hampton keeping evidence in her hall closet for 22 years because she believed someday someone would ask. Thank you, I said. She's ready, Atticus said. Everyone's ready. The question is, are you? Ask me again on October 15th, I said. October 5th, 10 days before the party. My phone rang. Celeste. I hadn't spoken to my sister in over a year. Since the divorce, since I'd stopped answering her calls, since I'd made it clear I wanted nothing from the family that had chosen Desmond over me. Her voice was sweet, fake sweet, the voice she used when she wanted something. Anastasia, she said. I know we've had our differences, but family is family. Desmond's hosting a beautiful yacht party next week. I'd like you to be there. Fresh start. I understood immediately. She wanted me there. Wanted me to watch Desmond propose to Yvette in front of everyone who'd ever judged me. Wanted me to crumble publicly so she could tell everyone afterward that I'd always been the weak one. Bradford needed Desmond's business connections. Celeste needed to prove she'd backed the right horse. This performance helped both. I'll be there, I said. Silence. She'd expected resistance. You will, she said. I mean wonderful. October 15th, 6 p.m., Harbor Marina. I'll bring Milo, I said. Of course, Celeste said. Family. I hung up and looked at Milo across the studio. He'd been listening. She gave you the invitation, he said. She gave me exactly what I needed, I said. There's a special kind of gift when your enemy hands you the weapon you need to destroy them and calls it an invitation. October 14th, night before the party. Milo knocked on my studio door. He was 15 now, taller than me by 3 inches, his father's dark eyes, but my steady hands. He'd been painting every day for 4 years, documenting moments he thought I needed remembered. I want to go with you tomorrow, he said. I'm not a kid you need to protect from the truth. I've been painting the truth since I was 11. I tried to shield him. Told him it would be difficult, that there would be cruelty, that I didn't want him to see his mother humiliated even if it was part of the plan. I know exactly what it's going to be, he said. That's why I'm going. You stood alone for 16 years, not anymore. I looked at my son, 15 years old enough to understand that justice sometimes requires witnessing injustice first. Okay, I said, we go together. That evening Julian came by. Didn't call first, just knocked on the studio door with 3 cups of hot cocoa from the cafe down the street. One for me, one for Milo, one for himself. He sat at the studio table, didn't ask about the plan, didn't offer advice, just placed the cups down and said, "You don't have to do this alone." "I'm not alone," I said, looking at Milo, at Julian, thinking about Atticus and Noelle and Dorian and Judith. I never was, I just didn't know it until recently. We drank our cocoa in silence. Comfortable silence. The kind that means you're not performing for anyone, just existing. Julian left at 9, squeezed my shoulder once, nodded at Milo. See you tomorrow. October 15th, 2024. Morning. Milo knocked on my bedroom door at 8 a.m. He was wearing a white button-down shirt, first time I'd seen him dressed formally. His hair combed, his face serious. "Mom," he said, "let's go." "Baby, the party isn't until 6. I know, he said, but I want to be ready. You want to know what readiness feels like? It feels like your 15-year-old son in a white shirt saying, "Let's go," when he knows exactly what go means. We took the subway to Harbor Marina, arrived at 5:45 p.m. as the sun was setting over New York Harbor. The yacht was massive golden lights reflecting on water champagne, already flowing 200 guests in elegant evening wear. Atticus waited at his entrance, nodded once when he saw us. "Your table is ready," he said. "Back row furthest from stage, exactly where your sister wanted you." "Perfect," I said. "I always see best from behind." Milo squeezed my hand. We walked up the gangplank together. On the yacht deck, I saw Yvette Harrington standing near the runway in the winter sky blue silk dress I'd designed at 3 a.m. after my son painted me working at 2 a.m. Hand-beaded bodice catching the light. The dress I'd sketched to answer the question, what does survival look like, as fabric? She was wearing my answer, she had no idea. The yacht lights were golden, the champagne was flowing. 200 Manhattan elite had no idea they'd bought tickets to the most expensive exposure in fashion history. Milo and I found our table at the back, lowest row, farthest from the stage, exactly where Celeste had planned to humiliate me. I sat down. Milo sat beside me. Atticus was somewhere in the crowd. Dorian, Noelle, Julian, Judith. Everyone was ready. In exactly 15 minutes, Yvette would walk toward our table and deliver the first insult. And the 22-year countdown would finally reach zero. The runway show ended at exactly 6:47 p.m., and Yvette Harrington stepped off the platform wearing $47,000 of my work, like it was a costume she'd earned. We'd arrived 15 minutes earlier. Milo and I walked up the gangplank side by side as the October sun set over New York Harbor, turning the yacht's golden lights warm against the darkening water. Atticus was at the entrance. He nodded once when he saw us. Everything ready. An event coordinator in black appeared at my elbow. Table 12 rear section, she said, checking her clipboard. Your sister specified the seating arrangement personally. She led us through the crowd of 200 guests in evening wear, past the champagne fountains and the runway set up all the way to the back. Table 12. Metal folding chairs while the VIP tables up front had cushioned seating, farthest from the stage, close enough to the exit that leaving would be noticed. I sat down. Milo sat beside me, his posture rigid. Mom, he whispered. We can leave right now. We don't have to. Yes, we do, I said. Not yet, sweetheart, not yet. Across the deck at table 3, Celeste watched us with a satisfied smile. She'd positioned us exactly where she wanted, far enough that we'd struggle to hear the speeches, close enough that everyone could see us sitting alone at the lowest table. She'd positioned us for maximum humiliation. She'd positioned us perfectly. The runway show started at 6:15. Music, soft lighting, models gliding down the platform in fall couture. The harbor breeze carried the scent of champagne and expensive perfume. Guests watched, applauded politely at each piece. I recognized 3 pieces in that show, designs I'd created between 2012 and 2016. The cream jacket from the year Milo turned 2, when I'd worked through his nap times. The black evening gown from the winter I'd sewn until 3 a.m., for 6 straight weeks straight, living on coffee and determination. The wool coat I'd hand-stitched while nursing a fever because Desmond needed it for Fashion Week and couldn't wait. They were being shown as classics now, timeless Desmond Sterling pieces. My historical catalog stolen and rebranded. Milo leaned close. That's the dress, he whispered. The final model had taken the runway. Yvette Harrington in winter sky blue silk hand-beaded bodice, structured yet fluid. The dress I'd designed at 3 a.m. after seeing Milo's painting of me working at 2 a.m. I know, I said. The one from my painting. I know, baby. You need to understand what it looks like when someone wears your work to mock you. It looks like validation and violation happening in the same moment. Photographers captured Yvette from every angle. The silk moved the way I'd intended, catching light at the bodice, flowing at the hem. She walked that runway like she owned the dress. Technically she did. Desmond had paid for it with my money. But the dress knew who'd created it. I could see it in the way the silk moved. Desmond stood stage left, watching Yvette with proprietary satisfaction. His hand rested on the back of an empty chair. He was smiling. The show ended. Applause. Yvette stepped off the platform. Anne walked directly toward table 12. She moved through the crowd with deliberate purpose, guests parting for her, the path clearly planned. She'd been rehearsing this route, this moment, probably with Celeste's coaching. She stopped at our table, reached down and touched the dress, deliberately smoothing the silk at her waist, making sure I saw every bead I'd sewn by hand. This is beautiful, isn't it? She said, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. Your ex-husband has such exceptional taste. If you'd known how to be a real wife, I wouldn't have had the chance to wear the dresses he buys for me. The emphasis on real wife was practiced. I could hear it in her cadence. She'd said this in front of a mirror, perfected the delivery, chosen each word for maximum impact. She touched the dress when she spoke, ran her fingers along the beading I'd sewn. I looked at her, said nothing for 3 seconds, let her think she'd landed the blow. Then I spoke, voice controlled, almost gentle. It's a beautiful dress. Yvette smiled. It is, isn't it? Desmond knows quality when he sees it. Guests at tables 11 and 13 were watching now, turning in their seats. The performance was working. Then my mother's voice carried across 3 tables. If a woman can't keep her husband, Constance said clearly, don't blame the man for finding someone more worthy. That's just facts. She didn't look at me when she said it, addressed the general crowd. But everyone knew who she meant. Celeste leaned forward from beside her. Some of us just handle life better, Anastasia. Some of us made smarter choices early on. Guests murmured. Some nodded. A woman at table 10 whispered to her companion. A man near the bar raised his eyebrows. This was what Celeste had wanted. Public dissection. Family turning on family in front of Manhattan's elite. Proof that I was the failure everyone had suspected. Desmond stood near the bar, now wineglass loose in his hand. He wasn't smiling anymore. He was watching my face, waiting for me to break. Counting to 5 is what you do when you can't fight back yet, but you also can't let them see you break. Under the table, Milo's hand found mine. His grip was tight, knuckles white from the pressure. My 15-year-old son holding me together while 200 people watched my own family dissect me like a cautionary tale. I squeezed back. Gentle pressure. The signal we'd agreed on, not yet. Guests at nearby tables turned to watch. Murmurs rippled through the crowd like a wave. Look at the ex-wife. Look at the poor single mother. Look at the woman who couldn't keep her man. Desmond raised his wine glass slightly in my direction, a private toast to what he thought was his victory. He had no idea that every second I sat there absorbing their cruelty was another second of evidence, another witness, another person who would remember they'd been in the room when it happened. Yvette moved away from our table, satisfied with her performance. Celeste was smiling. Constance was talking to the woman beside her, probably elaborating on my failures. Milo's hand stayed in mine under the table. His breathing was controlled but shallow. 15 years old and learning what it costs to be a witness to injustice. Soon, I whispered. He nodded once, didn't let go of my hand. The champagne arrived at 7:03 p.m., and my mother waited exactly 4 minutes before she delivered the line she'd been saving for maximum audience. Cocktail hour had begun. Waitstaff in black circulated with champagne flutes and hors d'oeuvres on silver trays. 200 guests settled into assigned tables for the pre-dinner service. The harbor lights reflected on dark water beyond the yacht deck. A jazz trio played softly near the stage. Everything elegant, everything expensive, everything designed to feel like the height of Manhattan society. Table 12 was still the farthest from the stage, but now we were surrounded by occupied tables. The audience was established. The performance could begin. No one mingled with us. We were the exhibit, not the guests. The freak show you glanced at between champagne sips. Milo's hand had finally released mine, but his posture stayed rigid. His jaw was set in a way I recognized the expression he got when he was trying not to cry or trying not to rage, sometimes both. "Mom," he whispered, "how much longer?" "Soon, baby," I said. "Not yet, but soon." I watched my mother at table 3. She was arranging her face. I knew that look. She was preparing the expression of someone about to say something cutting while pretending it's concern. At 7:07 p.m. exactly she spoke, loud enough for 5 surrounding tables to hear. "If a woman can't keep her husband," Constance said, her voice carrying across the deck, "you don't blame the man for finding someone more worthy. That's just how the world works." She paused. Let the words settle. Guests at tables 4, 5, and 6 turned their attention toward our table, then back to her, observing the dynamic, understanding who was being discussed. A woman at table 5 nodded. "Absolutely right," she said. Celeste leaned forward immediately, like she'd been waiting for her cue. "Anastasia's always played the victim," she said. "Some of us just know how to be proper wives. It's not that complicated." More murmurs. A man at table 7 shifted in his seat to get a better view of me. A woman at table 8 whispered to her companion. They were performing for each other. Mother delivered the line Celeste punctuated. It guests applauded with their silence and nods. Cruelty as dinner theater, and I was the only one who could see the script. You want to know what weaponized kindness looks like? It looks like your sister smiling while she publicly explains why you deserve to be abandoned. I counted to 5 again. Always 5. I'd been counting to 5 since I was 16. At 7:12 p.m., Bradford Pierce shifted his chair closer to Desmond's table. He'd been working up to this all evening, positioning himself, waiting for the right moment to deliver his own performance. "Desmond," he said, voice loud enough to carry, "your success is truly inspiring. You've built an empire through pure creative vision." Desmond smiled, modest, gracious, the smile of a man accepting praise he believed he'd earned. "Sterling Atelier sets the standard in American couture," another guest added from table 7. A man in an expensive suit I didn't recognize. A woman at table 6 turned in her seat. Unlike some people, she said, glancing at me, Desmond knows real quality. Each statement was an arrow, each one aimed at table 12, each one building on the previous, coordinated like a military strike. Bradford was still talking, leaning toward Desmond with the eager expression of someone chasing a business deal. Your creative instinct, Bradford said. Building something this significant from the ground up, remarkable. Milo's foot was tapping under the table. Fast, rhythmic, the way it did when he was trying to control anger. They're talking about you like you're not here, he muttered, voice so low only I could hear. I know, baby, I said, let them. My 15-year-old son was learning in real time that sometimes the cruelest people are the ones who smile while they do it. I looked at Bradford, at the way he angled his body toward Desmond, at the desperate quality beneath his flattery. He needed something, a contract, a connection, validation from the man he thought held power. He had no idea that the man he was flattering had built his empire on forged signatures and stolen work. That 3 of those forged signatures were Bradford's own, making him legally complicit in money laundering. That in less than 10 minutes, his brown-nosing performance would become evidence of his judgment failure. Desmond accepted the praise with practiced humility, nodded at Bradford, smiled at the guests offering compliments, glanced at Yvette, who stood near the stage entrance still wearing my dress. Then at 7:20 p.m., he set his champagne glass down, stood, touched his jacket pocket, left side interior, and I saw the outline, just for half a second before his hand moved away. The ring box. He was checking it was still there. 200 guests began to notice his movement. Conversations quieted, attention shifted. Milo saw my face change. Mom, he whispered. He's about to go on stage, I said. Is it time? Almost. Desmond looked toward the stage where a microphone stood ready in a stand, looked at Yvette, looked at the crowd. Excuse me, he said to the guests at his table. I have an announcement to make. Bradford practically glowed. We're all excited to hear it, Desmond. My mother leaned back in her chair with satisfaction. My sister smiled like she'd won something. Bradford watched Desmond with eager anticipation, and my son looked at me with the expression of someone ready to detonate a bomb. I nodded once, so small no one else would notice. Almost time. Desmond walked toward the stage, 200 witnesses watching his path. The jazz trio faded out, the microphone waiting, the ring box in his pocket containing a piece of jewelry that cost more than most people's houses purchased with money he'd stolen from me over 14 years. He had no idea this was my stage, that I'd bought it with evidence and witnesses and 22 years of documentation. That Atticus Whitfield controlled the lighting system, and Noel had set up the LED screen, and Dorian had loaded the financial records, and Judith was sitting somewhere in this crowd with a tin box of burnt sketches. That my 15-year-old son had spent 4 years painting evidence of my survival, and those paintings were about to appear on a 60-foot screen. That in exactly 7 minutes all the lights would go out. And when they came back on, everyone in this room would know exactly who'd built Desmond Sterling's empire. Desmond took the stage with a microphone and a smile that once convinced me he loved me, now it just looked like theft in a tuxedo. 7:27 p.m. He reached the microphone stand, tapped it once to test the sound. The feedback squeal made 200 guests wince. Then silence. Thank you all for being here tonight, he said, voice carrying across the yacht deck. Practiced. Confident. The voice of a man who believed every word he was about to say. This evening means more to me than I can express. Guests gathered closer to the stage. The jazz trio had stopped playing. Only the sound of harbor water against the yacht hull, the October breeze, champagne glasses being set down on tables. I stood at the rail with Milo beside me. Dorian was 3 steps behind us, folder under his arm. My stomach was tight, hands gripping the metal rail. I want to thank someone very special, Desmond continued. My father, who believed in my vision when no one else did, who gave me the chance to build something meaningful. Applause. Polite, warm. I saw Desmond's father, I didn't know his name, stand and nod, accepting the recognition. Desmond kept talking. Building an empire isn't just about talent. It's about finding the right partner. Someone who understands your vision. Someone who deserves everything you can offer. Yvette stood near the stage in the winter sky blue dress. My dress. The one I'd designed at 3 in the morning after seeing Milo's painting of me working at 2 a.m. She was glowing, hand pressed to her chest. I've spent years searching, Desmond said. Years wondering if I'd find someone who could truly be my equal, my muse, my future. Every word was a lie I'd designed 14 years ago. Every sentence built on foundations I'd laid while he took credit. Milo's hand found my elbow, gentle pressure, still waiting. Then Desmond reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out a ring box, Cartier, platinum. I could see the label from where I stood. The box caught the yacht lights glinted like a promise. 200 guests gasped. Yvette's other hand flew to her mouth. Yvette, Desmond said, voice breaking, perfectly practiced. I could hear it. He'd rehearsed this moment in front of a mirror. You are the muse I've been searching for my entire career. I gripped the rail so hard my knuckles went white. This was the moment I'd been waiting for. Not because I wanted him back, I'd stopped wanting that years ago, but because I needed everyone to see him at his highest point, at his peak, before I showed them who he really was. The ring box glinted in his hand. He was smiling. The crowd was holding its breath. Before I tell you what happened when those lights went out, are you still with me? Comment. A, if you think he knows what's coming, or B, if you think he has no idea, and tell me in one sentence why you chose that answer. Because this is where everything turns. Quick note, what follows includes some recreated details for narrative impact, but the core truth is what matters. Desmond opened the ring box. Emerald-cut diamond, massive, the kind that costs more than most people's houses. In that exact second, every light on the yacht cut to black. Total darkness. Screams. Immediate sharp cutting through the October air. Champagne glasses hitting the deck, I heard them shatter. Someone shouted about the generator. A woman near table 5 yelled for her husband. I stood perfectly still in the darkness. My heart was a drum. My hands still gripped the rail. This was Atticus's work. 5 seconds of chaos. Voices overlapping. Confusion spreading like wildfire. Desmond shouting, "What the hell, someone get the lights back on!" Then the LED screen on the main stage blazed to life. 60 feet wide, brilliant white light cutting through the darkness like a blade, and a voice filled every speaker on the yacht. Not Desmond's voice. Atticus Whitfield's voice, calm and measured. Before this evening ends, I'd like you to meet the real designer behind A Veil Atelier. My face appeared on the screen. Not my face from tonight. My face from 2002. 22 years old, holding my first sketchbook, standing in the Brooklyn apartment where I'd taught myself to draft patterns. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Different gasps now. Not excitement, confusion, recognition starting to dawn. The screen shifted, showed my hands drawing. The phoenix rising gown, the exact dress Yvette was wearing right now. The sketch filled the screen, every line visible, every detail I'd labored over. Timestamp in the corner. March 2002. My signature at the bottom. Atticus's voice continued filling the darkness. 22 years ago, a young designer named Anastasia Vale created the foundation of what you know as Desmond Sterling Atelier. Every design, every collection, every piece you've seen tonight. More gasps, louder now, voices starting to murmur. I felt 200 pairs of eyes searching for me in the darkness, trying to find my face, trying to understand what they were seeing. Desmond's voice cut through. This is absurd. Someone shut that screen off. This is a malfunction. But the yacht's power was completely under Atticus's control. The lights stayed off. The screen stayed on. More sketches appeared. Design after design. All mine. All dated between 2002 and 2010. The timestamps clear, undeniable. My signature on every piece. The black evening gown from 2014. The cream jacket from 2012. The wool coat from 2016. All of them appearing on screen with dates that proved they'd existed long before Desmond Sterling Atelier had ever claimed them. Get the goddamn lights on, Desmond shouted, desperate now. Someone is sabotaging. Milo squeezed my arm, leaned close in the darkness. Ready, he whispered. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me in the dark, even though my heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. The LED screen kept showing evidence. Sketch after sketch. Design after design. 22 years of work I'd done while Desmond took credit. 200 guests stood in darkness watching a 60-foot screen prove that the man who'd just tried to propose had built his entire empire on stolen genius. And somewhere in that crowd, my mother and sister were beginning to understand that the woman they'd spent the evening humiliating had just taken control of the entire night. I nodded. The screen flickered, and suddenly my sketches weren't alone anymore. Paintings bloomed across the display, vivid, raw, unmistakable. Little Orion's paintings. The ones that had been selling quietly in Brooklyn galleries for 4 years. The ones collectors whispered about, the ones no critic could ignore. There, beside my stolen fashion sketches, they burned with the same hand, the same soul. Ladies and gentlemen, Atticus's voice cut through the chaos. Allow me to introduce the artist behind Little Orion, Milo Vale, Anastasia's son. The lights came up, not all the way, just enough. A spotlight found Milo standing beside me. He didn't flinch. 15 years old, wearing the navy suit I'd tailored for him, looking every inch like the artist he'd become. The crowd inhaled as one. The paintings, Atticus continued, were Anastasia's way of training her son's eye. She taught him to see line, form, shadow. Everything Desmond stole from her she passed to Milo. Every painting carries her DNA. Every brushstroke is revenge. I watched Desmond's face on the screen's edge. Even in the dim light, I could see him crumbling. His mouth moved, but no sound came. His hands clutched at Julian's arm, but Julian stepped back, away, his expression blank. The gallery photos appeared next. Milo at 18 months, finger painting in our Brooklyn apartment. Milo at 5, sketching dresses while I worked. Milo at 10, his first canvas propped against our kitchen wall. And then the paintings themselves, each one dated, each one sold, each one proof that talent doesn't die, it adapts, it survives, it grows in the dark. My God, someone whispered behind me. Little Orion is a child. Not a child, I said loud enough to carry. An artist. The crowd turned. 200 faces pale in the darkness, all looking at me for the first time. Not at Desmond's ex-wife. Not at the woman he'd discarded. At me. Anastasia Vale. I stepped forward. The screen shifted again. This time it showed receipts, gallery sales, bank transfers. Every dollar Milo had earned, $340,000 over 4 years, now traced back to me. Proof that I'd rebuilt without Desmond's name, without his money, without anything he'd touched. That's not possible, Desmond shouted. His voice cracked. She's lying. The paintings are someone else painted those. She's manipulating. The timestamps don't lie, Desmond. Atticus again, his voice like ice. Neither do the galleries. We have signed affidavits from 3 curators confirming Milo's identity. We have video of him painting. We have his school records showing art classes since age 6. Would you like us to play those videos now? Silence. Desmond's face went gray. Then, Yvette moved. She'd been standing frozen at the stage edge, still holding the Cartier box, still wearing my dress. She looked down at herself, as if seeing the fabric for the first time. Her fingers touched the embroidered collar, the place where I'd hidden my initials, a V, so small no one would notice unless they knew to look. This dress, she whispered. Her voice carried in the hush. Anastasia, this is mine, I said. Every stitch. I designed it in 2009. Desmond released it in 2010 under his name. You bought it secondhand, I assume, from someone who bought it at his boutique. That's my work. You're wearing Yvette. That's my blood. She looked at Desmond. Something in her eyes shifted. Not quite understanding, not quite believing, but close. So close. Desmond? Her voice was small. He didn't answer. He was staring at the screen, at the numbers now scrolling past $43 million itemized by year, by design, by collection. Every dollar he'd stolen now visible to everyone who'd ever called him a genius. Constance Blackwell stood near the bar. She wasn't smiling anymore. Neither was Celeste Pierce. Neither was anyone. I took another step. The crowd parted. Not dramatically, not all at once, but slowly, inevitably, like a held breath, finally released. They moved aside and let me through. Milo stayed where he was. We'd planned this. He didn't need to follow. His paintings were speaking for him. My heels clicked on the deck, 60 feet between me and the stage. 50, 40. Anastasia, Julian's voice somewhere to my left. I didn't look. 30 feet. You can't do this, Desmond said. He'd found his voice again, ragged and desperate. You signed an NDA. You took the settlement. You have no legal. I signed an NDA that said I wouldn't disparage you publicly, I said. I'm not disparaging you, Desmond. I'm showing them the truth. There's a difference. 20 feet. The screen behind him flickered one last time. My face filled it not from 2002 but from tonight. A live feed from somewhere in the crowd showing me walking forward, showing my silver dress catching the light, showing my face calm and cold, and finally free. 10 feet. I stopped at the stage edge, looked up at him. He was smaller than I remembered. Smaller than he'd been in my nightmares. Just a man who'd stolen from his wife and called it genius. Every sketch, I said clearly, every design, every stolen year, mine. Then I stepped onto the stage. I crossed the stage to the microphone stand. Not to Desmond, he still held the ring box frozen, but to the stand Atticus had positioned stage left. I lifted the microphone free. The weight of it settled in my palm like a promise kept. 200 faces watched. For the first time tonight I stood in the spotlight. Not hidden at a back table, not dismissed as the ex-wife. Visible. My name is Anastasia Vale, I said. My voice carried across the deck clear and steady. 22 years ago, my name was Anastasia Vale. Desmond moved, half a step toward me, his hand reaching. Anna, don't do this! I stopped being Anna the day you burned my sketchbook. Silence. Even the water seemed to stop lapping at the hull. I turned to face the crowd fully. Milo stood where I'd left him near the screen. Atticus somewhere in the darkness monitoring. Dorian at the edge of my vision, hand on his leather bag. Everything exactly as we'd planned. Most of you know Desmond Sterling, I continued. Fashion genius, visionary designer, self-made success. Tonight I'm going to tell you who actually made him. Murmurs rippled through the guests. Phones rose. I let them. We wanted witnesses. This dress. I gestured to Yvette still standing near the stage in my Phoenix Rising gown. Phoenix Rising. Desmond's breakout design released in 2010. Sold for $47,000. Made his name in the industry. Yvette's hand went to her throat. The embroidered collar, the hidden initials. I drew it when I was 22 years old, I said. March 2002, 3 months before Desmond proposed to me. The screen behind Desmond flickered. My original sketch appeared pencil on paper, dated signed A.V. in the corner. Anastasia Vale, the lines identical to the dress Yvette wore. Every detail, every curve exactly the same. He saw it in my apartment when we were dating, I said. Told me it was brilliant, told me I had a gift, convinced me to marry him in October 2010, filed the patent in January 2011, 3 months after our wedding. That's not... Desmond's voice cracked. You're twisting... The patent office has the dates, Desmond. Our marriage license is public record. The timeline doesn't lie. Yvette stared at me, then at Desmond. Her fingers traced the embroidery at her collar, found the initials she'd never noticed. A V, not DS. You said... Her voice shook. Desmond, you said this was yours. You said... Miss Harrington is wearing 22 years of my work, I said clearly, and she had no idea. I looked directly at Yvette when I said the next part, because she deserved to know who dressed her tonight. Every dress in Desmond's Sterling collection came from my sketches. Every jacket, every coat, every piece he sold for 14 years. I designed them, he stole them, and he built an empire on theft. The crowd erupted, voices overlapping questions shouted. I let the noise build, then raised my hand. Silence came slowly. Milo, I called. He walked onto the stage. 15 years old in his navy suit, looking every inch the artist he'd become. The spotlight found him, and I heard the crowd's intake of breath. A child. Little Orion was a child. This is Milo Vale, I said, investigative journalist, and the artist you know as Little Orion. The explosion was louder this time. Shock, disbelief, recognition all at once. Phones everywhere now recording everything. Milo took my hand. Not for comfort we'd practiced this. Solidarity. 2 artists, 1 stage. I'm Little Orion, he said, his voice steady clear. Every painting Desmond Sterling has used in his campaigns for the past 4 years came from my mother's studio. He visited regularly. He photographed my work without permission. He built entire collections around concepts I painted. The screen shifted. Timestamps appeared. Milo's paintings dated weeks, sometimes months before Desmond's corresponding fashion lines launched. The evidence irrefutable. Gerald Sterling pushed through the crowd. Desmond's father, silver-haired and furious. "You told me you commissioned those pieces," he said to Desmond, sharp and cold. "You said they were yours." "Father, I can explain." "Explain to your lawyers," Julian's voice cut like glass. Then the flash. Bright, sudden. A woman near the bar, dark hair, sharp suit, phone raised high. She wasn't taking a photo. She was streaming. "Breaking," she said into her phone, voice carrying. Desmond Sterling accused of 14-year design theft by ex-wife Liv from Manhattan yacht party. I'm Leah Brennan Vogue and you're watching history. I watched the numbers on her screen climb. 10,000 viewers, 20,000, 50,000. The deck erupted. Questions hurled from every direction. How much did he steal? Will you sue? Was the marriage fake? Cameras flashing, phones raised, chaos spreading like wildfire. Desmond stood frozen. The ring box still in his hand, unopened. The proposal he'd never delivered. His face gray, his mouth moving without sound. Yvette stepped away from him. One step, then two, horror written across her face. "Someone call the patent office," a voice from the crowd. "Call the police," another. Atticus's voice cut through the speakers, calm and final. "We have 14 years of evidence." I looked at Dorian. He nodded, reached into his leather bag. The folder, the financial records, $43 million itemized and documented. Gerald Sterling grabbed Desmond's arm. "Give me one reason," he said, voice shaking with rage, "why I shouldn't disown you right now." Desmond had no answer. He stared at me, his empire crumbling in real time, broadcast to 50,000 people and growing. The microphone was still in my hand. Milo beside me. Dorian stepping forward with the folder that would end everything. I'd waited 22 years for this moment, and now the whole world was watching. Dorian reached the stage steps. Before he could speak, Atticus's voice cut through the chaos, clear and deliberate. "There's one more witness," he said, "someone who's been waiting 22 years to speak." I turned. Movement at the back of the stage, near the curtain where the catering staff had set up earlier. A woman emerged. White hair pulled into a neat bun, steady hands, 70 if she was a day. She carried something, a small tin box, the kind that once held tea or cookies. She walked toward me, her eyes met mine. Recognition hit like a fist. "Mrs. Hampton." The crowd quieted. No one knew who she was. I barely knew myself. 22 years was a long time, and I'd only seen her in passing, smoking on her fire escape, watering plants on her windowsill. She reached the microphone. Milo stepped aside, still close, his hand touching my arm. She looked out at the 200 faces, then at the camera Leah Brennan held high. "My name is Judith Hampton," she said. Her voice carried strength I didn't remember. "I was Anastasia's neighbor in Brooklyn in 2003, apartment 4B right above hers. I've been keeping evidence." "I don't understand," I whispered to Milo. "What evidence?" Judith heard me. She turned, met my eyes. "You'll see, honey. Just wait." She set the tin box on the edge of the stage where the camera could see. Hand steady, deliberate, she pried open the lid. Inside, charred paper. Dozens of pieces. Burnt edges, blackened corners, but visible sketches. Fabric swatches. Dates in handwriting I recognized because it was mine. The LED screen zoomed in. The fragments filled the display. Pencil lines showing dress designs, jacket silhouettes, collar details. March 2003 scrawled in the corner of one piece. A C signed on another. "These are pieces of Anastasia's sketchbook," Judith said clearly. "The one that was burned in March 2003. I collected them from the trash can outside our building the morning after. Kept them in this box for 22 years. My throat closed. Those sketches, I'd thought they were gone. Completely destroyed. Just ash and grief. "Who burned it?" someone in the crowd called. Judith's pause was deliberate. She let the question hang, let the tension build. "I saw who did it," she said finally. "I was on my fire escape that morning having coffee. I watched it happen." The deck went silent. Even the water seemed to still. Judith's gaze swept to the crowd, then stopped, fixed on two women standing near the port rail. I followed her eyes. My mother, my sister. Constance Blackwell. 68 years old. Silver hair cut sharp, wearing Chanel. She'd remarried after Dad died, changed her name, changed her life. Celeste Pierce, beside her, 42, now polished and perfect in Valentino. They'd been here the whole time, watching, silent. I saw Constance Vale now, Constance Blackwell burn that sketchbook in the courtyard, Judith said, each word a nail. I saw Celeste Vale now. Celeste Pierce tear up drawings the night before. Then I watched Celeste cry at her sister's door the next morning, pretending to comfort her. The world tilted. That's absurd, my mother said. Her voice carried sharp and defensive. I was trying to protect her from failure. Design wasn't realistic for her. She had no connections, no money. You burned my work. My voice broke for the first time tonight. My own mother. Who burns their daughter's dreams? Celeste tried to speak. Anna, you don't understand. We thought you'd waste years chasing something impossible. So you destroyed it, I said. You tore up my drawings. You burned my sketchbook. You told me I wasn't good enough. We were protecting you, my mother insisted, but her face had gone pale. 200 people staring, the live stream recording everything. Judith's voice cut through again. They wanted her to give up, to get a teaching job, something safe. They sabotaged her before Desmond Sterling ever could. I heard them talking in the courtyard. Constance said, she needs to face reality. This will help her move on. The crowd erupted. Phones turned toward my mother and sister. Leah Brennan's voice over the live stream. Breaking the designer's own mother and sister sabotaged her career from the beginning. Constance tried to move toward the exit. Guests blocked her path. Not deliberately, just bodies too many people, everyone wanting to see. Celeste covered her face with her hands. I cannot breathe. My own mother, my own sister. 22 years I'd thought Desmond was the first one to betray me, but they'd set the pattern. They'd taught me I was worth destroying. Judith walked to me, pressed the tin box into my hands. The metal was cool, solid, real. I kept them safe for you, she said quietly. I didn't know if they'd ever matter, but I couldn't throw them away. Something told me to wait. My fingers closed around the box. Inside the ashes of what I'd been. Proof that I'd existed before Desmond. That my work had been real. Thank you, I whispered. Judith nodded, stepped back, her testimony finished. The deck churned with noise. Questions shouted. Phones everywhere. Leah Brennan's live stream chat visible on someone's screen. Her own family. This goes deeper than the ex-husband. Constance Blackwell is a monster. Milo took my hand, squeezed. Then Dorian moved. He stepped fully onto the stage, opened his leather folder. Documents inside, thick stacks of them. Bank statements, transfer records, company registrations. He looked at me, I nodded. And now, Dorian said, his voice cutting through the chaos. Let me show you where $43 million went. The crowd turned. The live stream camera swung to capture him. Desmond Sterling, still frozen at the stage edge, began to shake his head. Too late. Everything was too late. Judith's testimony had shown them where it started. Dorian's evidence would show them where it led. And I stood between them, holding the ashes of my past, watching my entire life burn down in reverse. Dorian's iPad connected to the LED screen. The numbers appeared 60 feet high, red, undeniable. $43 million. The crowd gasped. I heard it roll through them like thunder. $43 million, Dorian said clearly, stolen over 14 years, every dollar traced to Desmond Sterling. The screen shifted. Bank transfers scrolled past. Dates, amounts, account numbers. Shell companies registered in Delaware, the Cayman Islands, Switzerland. Each one connected to Desmond by signature, by registration date, by documented ownership. 17 contracts, Dorian continued, with Anastasia's signature forged. Patent sales to dummy corporations, licensing fees redirected to offshore accounts, all of it documented. Gerald Sterling pushed to the front. His face had gone gray. You forged her signature on 17 contracts. Desmond opened his mouth, closed it. The business required capital. I was building our future. Our future, I said. The words came out sharp. I didn't have a future in your plans, Desmond. Just my work. Just my name on the line. You needed a signature. The screen showed one contract. March 2015. My signature at the bottom, except I'd been living in Brooklyn teaching art classes to pay rent. I'd never seen that contract. Never authorized that sale. The patent it sold was for a jacket design I'd sketched in 2004 before I'd even met him. How? Julian demanded. Dorian answered. He kept copies of her signature from their marriage documents, had them digitized, used them on contracts she never saw. The room erupted again, voices overlapping. Someone shouted about the FBI, someone else about the patent office. Leah Brennan's live stream caught it all. Then Dorian touched his iPad. The screen changed. 3 contracts appeared, different from the others. Intermediary agreements, the kind that legitimize transfers that make theft look legal. At the bottom of each one, a witness signature. Bradford Pierce, attorney at law. Notary stamp dated and official. Dorian's voice cut through the noise. Bradford Pierce, attorney and notary, witnessed 3 of these contracts. He's married to Anastasia's sister. I turned. Found Celeste in the crowd. Beside her, a man I'd met twice, once at their wedding, once at a Christmas dinner I'd left early. Mid-40s, expensive suit, the kind of face that looked honest until you knew better. Bradford's expression shifted from confusion to panic in the space of 3 seconds. I was told she'd signed them willingly, he said quickly. Desmond showed me the originals I verified. You notarized documents you knew were part of a patent transfer without confirming the signatory's identity in person. Dorian's voice was surgical. That's a felony, counselor. Celeste grabbed Bradford's arm. We're leaving, now! But the crowd had closed in. Not threatening just there. Too many bodies, too many phones, too many witnesses. I watched my sister try to flee with the man who notarized my theft. The man she married. The man who helped Desmond steal from me legally. The family betrayal doesn't have a bottom. It just keeps going down. My mother sat frozen at her table, Judith standing near her tin box testimony still hanging in the air. Constance Blackwell, who'd burned my sketchbook, whose daughter had married the man who'd legitimized my exploitation. All of it connected, all of it deliberate. Mother, I said, not a question, just acknowledgement. She didn't look at me. Movement to my right, Yvette. She'd been standing near the stage edge, still wearing my Phoenix Rising dress, still holding herself together through sheer force of will. She looked at Desmond. He stood 10 feet from her, the Cartier ring box still in his hand. He'd never actually put the ring on her finger. The blackout had interrupted. His proposal had died mid-sentence. She crossed to him, took the box from his hand, opened it. The diamond caught the light. $127,000 of stolen money turned into a symbol of a future that would never happen. She removed the ring from the velvet, placed it on the table beside them. I was wearing her stolen work, Yvette said, her voice flat, empty. You proposed to me with stolen money. Yvette, please let me explain. There's nothing left to explain. She turned, walked away through the crowd. They parted for her this time, not to witness but to let her escape. She deserved that much. Desmond reached for her once. His hand fell. Gerald Sterling watched his son lose everything in real time. If you leave this yacht, he said, voice shaking, you are no longer my son. Desmond looked at his father, then at me. I stood on the stage, microphone still in my hand, Milo beside me, Dorian's evidence displayed behind me. 200 witnesses, live stream running, 60,000 viewers and climbing. He had no words left, no defense, no charm. He leaves, just turns and walks away. It's not the confrontation I imagined, it's better. He has nothing left to say, no closing argument, no final plea. He walks toward the lower deck exit, and nobody stops him. Where would he go? What's left? Security stepped aside. The crowd parted. Desmond Sterling disappeared down the stairs. Gone. I thought I'd feel something. Triumph. Vindication. Victory. Instead, hollow. Empty. 22 years of rage, and when it ended, it just ended. Milo touched my arm. Mom. I handed him the microphone. Stepped off the stage. The crowd watched but didn't follow. They sensed something private coming. I walked to my mother's table. Constance sat with her hands folded, trying to maintain composure, trying to look dignified while Judith's testimony and Bradford's signature destroyed any defense she might have built. I stopped in front of her. She looked up. Our eyes met for the first time in 5 years. I came to be seen as I am, I said. She opened her mouth, closed it, looked away. No apology, no explanation, no acknowledgement, just silence. I turned, walked back toward the stage where Milo waited. The tin box of burnt sketches sat on the edge where Judith had left it. I picked it up, the metal cool against my palms. 22 years of ash. Behind me, my mother sat speechless. Ahead of me, the crowd still recording, still watching, still bearing witness. Leah Brennan's livestream hit 75,000 viewers. The story was out, the truth was told. And somewhere below deck, Desmond Sterling walked off his father's yacht into whatever came next. I'd waited 22 years for this moment. Now it was done. The yacht party ended at midnight. By sunrise, Leah Brennan's livestream had been viewed 2 million times. I woke in my Tribeca studio to light cutting through the windows and my phone vibrating against the nightstand. The screen showed 147 missed calls. Text from Milo at 6:42 a.m. You broke the internet, 2 million views and climbing. I sat up. The tin box of burnt sketches sat on my dresser where I'd set it last night. Proof in ashes. 22 years in a tin container. My phone rang again. Dorian, have you looked at the news? He asked when I answered. I just woke up. Turn on your television, any channel. I did. CNN. A business anchor at a desk footage from the yacht party playing behind her shoulder. Design theft spanning 14 years exposed at Manhattan yacht party last night, she said. Exclusive footage shows Desmond Sterling, fashion heir and designer, accused by his ex-wife of systematic embezzlement and intellectual property theft totaling $43 million. The Securities and Exchange Commission has opened an inquiry. The SEC, not just fashion press, not just industry gossip, the government. Dorian, I said slowly, the SEC. And the New York Attorney General's office, he confirmed. This isn't just a civil case anymore. Forged signatures on 17 contracts, shell companies' offshore accounts. That's federal fraud. That's criminal. I sat on the edge of my bed, watching footage of myself on stage, microphone in hand, Milo beside me. The screen showed Dorian's evidence, the transfers, the accounts, the numbers. 2 million people had watched this. By noon, it would be 5 million. The next 48 hours moved like an avalanche. Desmond lost 3 major contracts. Bergdorf Goodman canceled his spring line. Neiman Marcus pulled his designs from their flagship store. A London boutique that had carried his work for 8 years issued a statement, "We do not partner with thieves." Gerald Sterling appeared on camera outside his Fifth Avenue office. Silver hair, tailored suit face, carved from ice. He read from a prepared statement, "I disavow any association with Desmond Sterling and condemn his actions entirely. Effective immediately, he is removed from all family business interests and inheritance rights. Disowned, publicly, permanently." By October 27th, 2 weeks after the yacht, Desmond's assets were frozen. SEC investigators seized his accounts, his properties, his car. Favreau Atelier stock suspended pending investigation. The fashion empire he'd built on my work dissolved like sugar in water. Yvette gave an interview to Women's Wear Daily. I watched it in my studio, Milo sitting beside me on the couch. "He dressed me in stolen work," she said on camera, voice steady. "He proposed with stolen money. I feel like an accessory to theft." "She's not wrong," Milo said quietly. "No," I agreed. "But she's also a victim. He used her like he used me." The investigation spread. Bradford Pierce, Celeste's husband, the attorney who'd notarized 3 fraudulent contracts, found himself under review by the New York State Bar Association. His law license suspended pending inquiry. His defense, "I relied on assurances from Desmond Sterling that signatures were legitimate." Celeste called me twice. I watched the blocked number appear on my screen, let it ring through to voicemail, listened later. "I need to explain," her voice said, shaking. "Mom made me. She said you needed to face reality. Please call back." I deleted it. I don't answer Celeste's calls. 22 years ago, she tore my drawings. She pretended to comfort me while sabotaging my work. She married a man who helped legitimize my theft. She doesn't get absolution now. Not from me. My mother stayed silent. No public statement, no interview, no apology. She'd remarried, well, changed her name to Blackwell, built a life in Connecticut. Now that life had a stain she couldn't remove. Daughter betrayer, sketchbook burner, truth destroyer. Judith Hampton gave an interview to the Times. "I kept those burnt pieces for 22 years, she said, 74 years old and steady as stone. Because I knew someone would try to erase her. They already had once. I wasn't going to let them do it again." The article called her a hero. I called her and thanked her. She said, "You did the hard part, honey. I just kept a box." By November 12th, exactly 1 month after the yacht party, I sat in a conference room at Vogue headquarters. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan. Polished table. 3 people across from me, the editor-in-chief, a patent attorney, and Atticus on video call from his London office. The contract sat in front of me, 20 pages. Legal language that translated to one truth: I was officially reclaiming my name. "This is the most anticipated designer reveal in fashion history," the editor said, mid-50s, sharp suit eyes that had seen 1,000 careers rise and fall. "The world's been waiting 22 years. The patent attorney, a woman named Margaret Strauss, gray hair and reading glasses, slid a document across the table. "All designs officially reverted to your ownership as of this morning," she said. "Patents reversed, trademarks transferred, intellectual property restored. You own everything you created. The valuation sits at $43 million. $43 million, the exact amount Desmond had stolen, now legally permanently mine." I picked up the pen. Atticus's face on those screens smiled. The girl who lost her sketchbook just reclaimed $43 million in intellectual property. This is what winning looks like: not revenge, but reclamation. Not destruction, but restoration. Taking back what was always mine. I signed. Anastasia Vale. A Val Atelier. The mystery designer no longer a mystery. The stolen woman no longer stolen. The editor shook my hand. The attorney filed the papers. Atticus raised a coffee mug in London. "To visibility." "To visibility?" I echoed. Outside the windows, Manhattan spread in every direction. Somewhere in that city, Desmond sat in a lawyer's office preparing for trial. Somewhere my mother lived with the knowledge that her daughter had succeeded despite her. Somewhere my sister's calls went unanswered. But here in this room I was Anastasia Vale, designer, artist, mother, survivor. And I was finally legally publicly free. The contract signing at Vogue was public. The real work happened a week later in Atticus's office. The first time I saw my real name in print. Anastasia Vale, designer, credited on patent US 1089-2457. I forgot how to breathe. "Every patent," Atticus said. He scrolled through the database on his laptop screen, turned so I could see. "Every trademark, every copyright, retroactively credited to you. The record now reflects truth." I stared. Row after row of designs, dates spanning 2010 to 2024. Where Desmond Sterling's name had been, now Anastasia Vale. "You can do that," I asked. "Just rewrite 14 years. Dorian leaned forward from the chair beside me. "When the theft is proven, the record is corrected. You were always the designer, now the law agrees." Atticus clicked through screens. "Phoenix Rising 2010, Evening Sonata Jacket 2013, Midnight Meridian Coat 2018. All mine. Officially, permanently. The history books rewritten in ink that wouldn't fade." "Sterling Collection no longer exists," Atticus said. "It's Vale Collection now. Every piece archived under your name. Fashion historians are already updating their databases." I touched the screen. My name where his had been. Not victory correction. The universe writing itself. "Thank you," I said quietly. Atticus smiled. "You did the hard part. I just filed the paperwork." 3 weeks later, I stood in a Soho gallery surrounded by paintings of women who refused to disappear. Milo's exhibition, Women Who Stay. 15 oil paintings, each one massive, 6 feet tall, 8 feet wide. The kind of art that demanded you stop, look, feel. The opening night was packed. Fashion world art collectors, journalists with cameras. Everyone who'd watched the yacht party livestream, everyone who'd followed the story, everyone who wanted to witness the next chapter. I walked slowly through the gallery, each painting a story. Woman at a sewing machine, dawn light cutting through a window. Woman walking through fire, holding a sketchbook. Woman standing on a stage, microphone in hand, crowd watching. Then I reached the centerpiece. Phoenix Actually Rising. A woman at a drafting table, surrounded by burnt paper pieces, charred edges, visible sketches. She wasn't looking at the ruins. She was drawing, creating something new from the ashes scattered around her. And her face. My face. Not exactly. Milo had painted it with more strength than I'd ever seen in mirrors. Sharper jaw. Eyes that looked fearless. But unmistakably me. My face in oil paint looks braver than I feel. It's the first one I painted after the yacht party, Milo said, appearing beside me. He wore a dark suit, hair combed back, looking older than 15, looking like the artist he'd become. I needed to show what I saw that night, not the revenge, the rebuilding. I couldn't speak, just nodded. He squeezed my hand once, then moved away to talk to a gallery director. I stood alone before my painted self, the woman who kept creating despite everything, the woman I'd been trying to become for 22 years. Excuse me. The voice came from behind me. I turned. Julian Sterling, silver hair, expensive overcoat face, lined with the kind of age that comes from building empires and watching them crumble. He stood 10 feet back as if unsure whether he was welcome. We were the only two people near this painting. The crowd had moved to the next room. Mr. Sterling, I said. He gestured to the painting. I stood on that yacht and defended my son's genius for 30 minutes. I was defending a thief. I waited. Let him speak. I should have asked, he continued, his voice quieter now. Where the designs came from, how he worked so fast, why he never sketched in front of me, I never asked. You believed your son, I said. Most fathers would. Belief without question is negligence. He looked at the painting, at my face rendered in oil. I built my fortune on your work. I owe you more than money can repay. It wasn't an apology, not quite, but it was acknowledgement. And from Julian Sterling that meant something. Your son made his choices, I said. You didn't burn my sketchbook. You didn't forge my signature. You just believed someone you loved. He nodded, looked at me directly for the first time. He's facing trial in February. Federal fraud charges. If convicted, 10 to 15 years. I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no guilt. Just nothing. I hope he uses the time well, I said. Gerald's mouth twitched, almost a smile. So do I. He left without another word. The gallery door closed behind him. Milo appeared again. Was that? His father, I confirmed. What did he want? To acknowledge what happened, in his way. Milo studied my face. Is that enough? Some apologies take years. I can wait. Or maybe I don't need them at all anymore. It's something, I said. We stayed until closing. Milo sold 7 paintings. The centerpiece, Phoenix Actually Rising, went to a private collector for $60,000. Milo donated half to a youth art program in Brooklyn. The other half he put toward college. I took him to dinner, celebrated, laughed for the first time in what felt like months. We got home late. I kicked off my heels, poured water, checked my phone. One missed call, Constance Blackwell. I stared at the screen. She hadn't called since the yacht. 3 months of silence. I called back. She answered on the second ring. I saw the exhibition write-up in the Times, she said. No greeting. You made me proud. The words landed wrong. Pride. Not apology. Not regret. Pride as if my vindication reflected well on her. I didn't do this to make you proud, I said, my voice calm, steady. I did it to survive what you tried to destroy. Silence on the other end. You burned my sketchbook, I continued. You told me I wasn't good enough. You let Celeste sabotage me. For 22 years you chose to believe I deserved less than I earned. I was protecting you. You were erasing me. Another silence, longer this time. When you're ready to apologize, I said quietly. Really apologize for the burning, for the doubt, for 22 years of choosing everyone's truth over mine, I'm here. But pride isn't what I need from you, Mom. Accountability is. I hung up. Milo stood in the doorway watching. Good, he asked. Good, I confirmed. He nodded, went to bed. I sat in the quiet of my studio, phone dark, city lights beyond the window. My name was restored. My work was mine, my son was thriving, the truth was told. And my mother would either learn what apology meant or she wouldn't. Either way, I'd survived. My mother never called back. 3 months passed. December, then Christmas, then the New Year, and the phone stayed silent. That was okay. I'd meant what I said about boundaries. 3 months after the yacht party, I woke up to silence, and it didn't feel like loneliness anymore. January morning. Light poured through the studio windows, the kind of clean winter brightness that made colors look sharper. My expanded Tribeca space had doubled since November, 2 drafting tables, now floor-to-ceiling fabric samples, organized by shade, a coffee station Milo had installed because he'd gotten tired of walking 3 blocks for decent espresso. He sat by the window now sketching, 16 years old as of last week. Still little Orion to the art world, still my son to me. His next series was taking shape landscapes with hidden figures stories buried in brushstrokes. "The light's perfect this morning," he said without looking up. "You should photograph these samples." I glanced at the fabric draped across my table. Deep burgundy silk, the kind that caught light like wine. "Already did. Dawn shots for the spring line." "Smart." The coffee maker beeped. I poured 2 cups, one black for me, one with too much cream for Milo. The smell filled the studio, rich, warm, ordinary. This was what normal felt like after 22 years of fighting. Coffee, sunlight, work without fear. "You staying for lunch?" I asked. "I'm testing a new pattern." "Julian's bringing cocoa at 9, Milo said. He smiled at his sketch. "Stay for that." "Always." Julian arrived exactly at 9. 3 cups balanced in a carrier door opening with the bell I'd installed last month. He was 43, an art dealer Milo had introduced in December after the exhibition. Dark hair going silver at the temples, the kind of steady presence that didn't announce itself, just showed up. "3 cocos," he said, setting them on the counter. "Extra cinnamon for you, extra marshmallows for the artist." I took mine. The warmth seeped into my palms. "You're consistent. I'm not used to that." "Get used to it." He met my eyes. "I don't quit easily." Milo grinned into his cocoa. "He really doesn't. I tried to get him to stop calling me the artist, and he's been doing it for 3 months. "It's what you are," Julian said simply. He stayed an hour. Talked about a gallery opening in February, asked about my spring line launch, listened when I explained the silk sourcing from a woman in Vermont who hand-dyed every yard. He didn't need me to explain burnt sketchbooks, or stolen names, or yacht parties with live streams. He knew the story, everyone did, but he didn't treat me like I was made of those moments. He treated me like I was made of mornings like this one. When he left, he kissed my temple. Brief, warm. "See you tomorrow." "Tomorrow," I confirmed. The door closed. Milo went back to his sketch. I sat at my drafting table, hands wrapped around the cooling cocoa. What is revenge worth, if you're still alone at the end? I'd asked myself that question on the yacht. I thought the answer was that revenge itself was the point, exposure, vindication, truth. But sitting here with cocoa going lukewarm and winter light slanting across my desk, I understood revenge was just the clearing. The space it made was what mattered. And what filled that space, who filled it, that was the real answer. I opened the drawers where I kept Judith's tin box. The burnt pieces of my 2002 sketchbook still inside, preserved behind glass now. Museum-quality framing for museum-quality trauma. Beside it, my current sketchbook. A. Vale Atelier, Spring 2025. Written in gold on the cover. Every design inside officially, legally, permanently mine. I opened both. Charred edges versus clean pages. Theft versus ownership. Silence versus voice. The original Dress from Ashes sketch was near the bottom of the burnt pieces. I'd drawn it at 18, a dress rising from flames. Phoenix wings spreading from the hem, a single figure standing alone in the fire. That dress had become Phoenix Rising, the one Desmond released in 2010, the one Yvette wore on the yacht. Stolen, transformed, reclaimed. But the figure in the original sketch, that solitary woman in the flames, that wasn't who I was anymore. I flipped to a fresh page in my new sketchbook, started drawing. The same dress, same phoenix wings, same flames rising from the hem, but this time I added 3 figures beside it. A woman with a drafting pencil, myself. Creating, always creating, even when the world burned around me. A younger man with a paintbrush. Milo. The son who'd learned to see beauty in ashes, who'd turned my stolen story into art that sold for $60,000, who stayed when staying was the hardest thing. A man holding 3 cups. Julian. Not blood family, not the dramatic proposal with the expensive ring, just someone who showed up consistently, who learned I took cinnamon in my cocoa, who didn't need me to be healed before he cared. The phoenix doesn't rise alone, it just takes 20 years to learn that. I worked for an hour. The sketch took shape. Not perfect, my hand was rustier than it used to be, but true, real. Milo came to look over my shoulder. "That's us," he said quietly. "It is. You're not alone in the fire anymore." "No," I touched the sketch. "I'm not." He squeezed my shoulder once, went back to his window. I stared at the drawing. The dress that had started everything. The figures who'd ended up mattering more than revenge, more than vindication, more than viral live streams and SEC investigations. My mother had burned my first sketchbook because she thought I needed to face reality. My sister had torn my drawings because she thought I needed protection from failure. Desmond had stolen my designs because he thought I wouldn't fight back. They'd all been wrong about what I needed. What I needed was this morning light coffee going cold. A son who painted women who stayed, a man who brought 3 cups when 2 would have been enough. People who didn't need me to pretend. People who showed up when showing up was all there was. I signed the sketch at the bottom right corner. Anastasia Vale, January 15, 2025. 22 years from ashes to this moment. Outside the window, Manhattan moved. Somewhere in that city, Desmond prepared for trial. Somewhere my mother lived with her silence. Somewhere my sister's calls still went unanswered. But here in the studio, I had everything I'd spent 2 decades fighting for. Not revenge, not even justice, really. Just this. The freedom to create without fear. The space to love without pretending. The knowledge that family isn't who shares your blood, it's who stays when the fire comes. A family is complete when no one has to pretend to be loved. This is what I learned. And to you listening to my story, remember this. The people who try to erase you are often the ones who fear what you might become. For too long, I believed the lies. I thought my mother burned my sketchbook out of love. I thought my sister was protecting me. I thought my husband was my partner. Don't make my mistake. Don't let anyone convince you that silencing yourself is the same as being safe. The truth is, silence only protects the people who want to use you. I learned that family isn't about blood, it's about who stays when everything burns. My real family turned out to be my son who painted my story when I couldn't speak it. A man who brought cocoa without being asked. A neighbor who kept burnt sketches for 22 years. I believe God put me through this, not to break me but to show me who I really was beneath the names people tried to give me. Sometimes the fire doesn't destroy you, it reveals you. So let me ask you, have you ever had someone try to erase your voice? Did you reclaim it, or are you still fighting? Leave a comment and tell me your truth. If this story meant something to you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you want more stories like this, subscribe to herdramastories. I'll be here. Thank you for staying until the very end. Your presence means everything to me. Final note. Some details have been fictionalized for storytelling. But the core truth, the lesson about reclaiming your voice and choosing your family, is what I hope stays with you.